Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning to you. It's almost coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you so much for your company. Always fabulous to have your company on a freezing cold Monday morning. I can't believe it is still January, isn't it? Is it just me, or is this month taking a really long time to get over with? Come on, spring. Bring it on. Bring it on. Anyway, lots to talk about. Hopefully we will keep you cheery and warm, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device. Thank you, as always, for your company. Don't forget, if you missed anything from the show, by the way, if you missed anything from last week, rip-roaring shows last week, go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing Andy Burnham getting blocked by Labour's NEC, brackets, Keir Starmer, from standing in an upcoming by-election. The second fatal shooting of a protester in Minneapolis by ICE agents. Major new police reforms back here in Britain. And Reform UK pledging to pardon convicted Troubles veterans. Direct contrast with what the Labour policy was announced last week. Loads more to talk about. Just so much to get through. Question I'm asking you today is about Andy Burnham. But I have a funny feeling a lot of you might want to have your say on what's going on in Minneapolis. There's ICE agents in reaction there, and whose side you're on. So you're welcome, as you know, to get in touch on anything you want to talk about. The phone lines are open. But in particular, would like to hear from you about Keir Starmer blocking Andy Burnham from standing in that Gorton and Denton by-election in Manchester. He, of course, is a Manchester mayor, Greater Manchester mayor. He had to ask permission from the National Executive Committee, led, of course, by Keir Starmer, one Prime Minister who doesn't want a challenger sitting in the Houses of Parliament, rather have him up north as a mayor rather than an MP, unable to actually be the leader of the party until he becomes an MP. Just want to know your reaction to that. Do you think it was the right decision by Keir Starmer for the country, for Manchester, for the Labour Party, or just for Keir Starmer? And how well do you think that's going to work out for him? We're going to be talking to two Labour MPs who think not very well a little bit later on in the show, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs $1, standard network rate message. Benedict Spence, I'm delighted to say, is joining me today, Conservative commentator. And I'm a keen Labour Party watcher, she said sarcastically.
Solidarity, comrade.
Solidarity, comrades.
And what?
Do you think that? Well, no. I think we all thought that Keir Starmer was going to block Andy Burnham, didn't we?
Yeah.
I mean, Keir Starmer was in between a rock and a hard place. He didn't want Andy Burnham back in Parliament, but he didn't want to be seen to be the bloke who was blocking him when he's his most likely challenger, the king up north, Mr. Lefty, clearly backed by Angela Rayner. And also, by the way, I say both terrifyingly and hilariously, apparently, planning to make Ed Miliband his Chancellor if he was leader. I mean, come on, just for the laughs, guys.
It's one of those where you just have to sit back and say, first and foremost, Andy Burnham solves none of the problems that this country is currently facing. So anybody who was sort of hopeful that if he were to become an MP and then launch a leadership challenge, that everything would get better.
He's a better communicator. He's more likeable.
Boris Johnson was a good communicator and likeable, and he set the country on fire.
Makes a fair point.
that, if anything, I'd say that should count against him, how good a communicator. You should start from -5 in the polls if you're a really good talker and have to sort of work your way up. Yeah. He obviously would have been better at that than Keir Starmer, though, and he would have presented the opportunity for a clean start. Keir Starmer, of course, keeps on trying to have these fresh starts.
Resets.
Then everything goes badly wrong.
I don't know, we're on phase 422 now,
Yeah, you get 48 hours after Keir Starmer announces a reset before something truly cataclysmic happens. But he would have allowed them that clean break of a sort, but he wouldn't have solved anything, because actually the main problem to everything that's currently facing the country is not, in fact, just Keir Starmer. It is a broader thing called the Labour Party. And it's this thing that's currently in power, and these people that have got the letters MP after their names. And the problem is, if Andy Burnham becomes an MP, well, then he's one of those MPs that are causing all the problems because they won't let things be cut, they won't let sensible decisions be made, even when, on occasion, the government decides, oh, things are not looking good, we might need to do something sensible. The MPs go, no, let's not do that, because we're the Labour Party.
Got the same economy, the same international, same world events.
Yeah.
You know, Sorry,
but Ed Miliband as Chancellor.
Yeah,
look
exactly.
at the positives.
The same issue with energy.
Yeah.
As you say, the same Labour backbenchers who won't allow any welfare reform, any cuts to any benefits, pensions, whatever it is. So it's the same problem. Better communicator, more left wing.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. No one knew whether Keir Starmer was left wing or right wing, because he stood on a left wing policy to be Labour leader, and then he stood on a right change.
It's funny when we say right wing in regards to the Labour Party, because they're still actual socialists.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, I mean, even the Conservative Party is basically Blair.
Yeah.
I don't think he even knows what he thinks. But he doesn't think very much. But Andy Burnham, look, I mean, there was that argument, wasn't there, of the Labour Party, which is, I mean, and Keir Starmer has been out and about today. Briefly in the country speaking. He said that Andy Burnham is doing a great job as Greater Manchester Mayor, but allowing him to run for a Westminster seat would divert our resources from Labour campaigns in May's election. This is a perfectly legitimate argument. That he stood in spring 2024 for a 4-year term for the mayoralty. He's only halfway through. The mayoral election in Manchester would cost the country, would cost taxpayers more than £4 million. How these things cost that much, I don't know, but they do. It's equivalent to 20 parliamentary seats, effectively. It looks quite clearly right now that it would go to reform right now. So you'd lose the mayoralty, use all that power, all that funding, and that base in the north. You're spending a load of money. Labour fighting it would spend a load of they don't really have any resources. Funnily enough, no one wants to give them money right now. At the time, they're also facing local elections in Wales and Scotland could see Labour wiped out. And then just to get this one by-election, which Reform could still win, more likely, if Andy Burnham was very popular in Gorton and Danton, he would win this as a big name. But in return for you're going to lose one seat or you're going to lose the mayoralty, it's a perfectly reasonable, rational, logical argument for both the Labour Party and Keir Starmer not to think that that's a price worth paying for Andy Burnham to be back as a backbench MP, stroke put him in the cabinet, and/or a leadership challenge.
I mean, for the Labour Party more broadly, I still think that in a mayoral race, actually, broadly speaking, these roles are not as important as people think they are.
No.
Mayor of London gets much bigger sort of overhead than a lot of others
Just the
do.
fireworks.
But that's because it's London and all the cameras are focused on, and the BBC's based there and all that. And, the BBC is actually based in Manchester as well, which is also, I suppose, why people know who Andy Burnham is. Does anybody know who the Mayor of Merseyside is?
No, he also, I'm sorry, he played a blinder during lockdown for his part of the world, which was under tier restrictions, and the people were not getting help. And he did put the needs of lots of places outside London on the map. I think he's a good operator.
He's a good communicator, but this is the thing where you say it wouldn't be in the Labour Party's interest to do this. I think the Labour Party needs a shot of adrenaline in the arm, if nothing else. If it's wedded to the idea that it's simply going to vote against cuts to anything or anything pragmatic or that people actually want, at the very least it needs to get some sort of energy back. That's not going to come from Keir Starmer. No. It might well have come from Andy Burnham. Whatever else he is somebody who can, as you say, he can raise awareness. He's a good communicator. Yep. He brings a little bit more sort of feisty, a bit more soul to it. Now, look, it's not somebody that I would vote for, but he is somebody who does resonate a lot with those sort of left-wing Labour voters, a lot of whom, of course, are being siphoned off to the Green Party. They need to think about that as much as anything else.
That's going to be a big challenge, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, Burnham could, of course, run as an independent. He would, under the Labour Party rule, he would have to stand down from that seat. That's the thing. He'd have to stand down from the mayoralty to do it. Would he be willing to do that?
That would be such... I tell you what, though, that would be such a bold play, because let's say he did it and he won, which I suspect he really would. What do you do then if you're Keir Starmer? Do you not allow him back into the Labour Party? Are you actually going to sit there and be that petty? Yeah. At that point, it's such a challenge to your authority. If you're Keir Starmer, you have to let him in. You have to go sort of fair play, because otherwise everybody's looking at you and going, you've just been slapped in the face.
But right now,
publicly.
Everyone is sort of laughing at Keir Starmer. I mean, he was on this NEC Officers Committee. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, was chairing it. She abstained. Lucy Powell, the Deputy Leader of the party, was the only member of that 10-strong committee that voted for Andy Burnham to be allowed to make this move. Starmer is looking weak. There's no doubt at all about this. Now, word is that Andy Burnham had about 100 backbench Labour MPs who were willing to back him if there were a leadership contest. He only needs 81. Wes Streeting, apparently, has got 200. Now, he may have support from MPs, whether it's that number or not. Good luck with you. Good luck with that. But he won't get the support from the party membership, I suspect. Does all this debacle, does this overall leave Keir Starmer weaker or stronger?
It leaves him weaker, ultimately, because all that he's demonstrated now is that he didn't have the confidence in his own ability to see off Andy Burnham, to let Andy Burnham fight for that seat by himself. Ultimately, that would have been the stronger thing. And of course, even though it would have been more likely Burnham would have won the by-election, there is every chance that had the Green Party put up a good candidate against him, they would have siphoned up enough votes to let Reform in as well. Because I tell you what, Reform would have seen Andy Burnham sitting in that seat and gone, we are going to throw the kitchen sink, because we're going to prove to the country, we're not just going to knock out this guy, Keir Starmer, at the next election, we're going to knock out the guy that they try to replace him with.
I tell you what, though, that, I mean, it really would have been the comedy solution would have been, yeah, you can stand, give up the melty, run for it, and then. Well, the thing is, I don't know if he'd have to give it up. It's very confusing. The Labour rules say he does, but there's no legal requirement for him to give it up. I think they would have kind of kept it on a, but then Andy Burnham losing it, because that would have been just for the laughs. Very amusing. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Do you think Keir Starmer's weakened, strengthened? Would you reckon Andy Burnham as a potential leader? Just give us a call, 0344 499 1000. I also want to hear your thoughts on this ICE agent killing. Second protester in weeks who has been killed in Minneapolis. The only place this is happening is Alex Pretty. He was an ICU nurse. This comes after Renee Good was killed when she was in her car. Seen a lot of the videos, lots of debate, and as per usual, this is completely what people are seeing, watching the same videos, and it's like 20 different angles. This is what this event was. It is a tragedy. I'm sorry, anyone getting shot dead who's not a threat to people is absolutely a tragedy. And I think anyone who thinks it isn't, I'm sorry, is quite immorally questionable. No, he's looking.
No, it's not that I think it's not a tragedy.
But this is the thing. People are coming up with their view on whether it was who was in the right and who was in the wrong based on their party allegiance. So you're a Republican, are you a Democrat, are you Tory Reform, or you Labour? I think it's more complicated than that. It seems to me to be really, really simple. It's like I don't know why people on the left are justifying, but basically think themselves progressive. These are Democrat, hard, either hard left or really sort of like they think themselves progressive Democrats who are trying to stop federal agents mandated by the electorate and by the government to carry out law enforcement in their neighbourhood to arrest and deport illegal migrants and criminals. They're largely, the people they're going after are people who are in the country illegally, either before or after they have committed crimes where they are no longer allowed to be allowed in the country. That's it. That is what they're doing. The only reason ICE agents come tooled up like they're Rambo with their faces covered is because progressives on the left have been identifying them, and these people's homes and families, children, have been targeted. Okay, so it's very, very simple to me that these people are carrying out their duties, and it looks like they're coming in all mob-handed. That's because the local law enforcement have been told by the Democrat, governor and mayor, you're not to help. These are sanctuary cities. We're absolutely fine with a load of foreign illegal immigrants who are committing crime to be in this country. Well, I think that's insane. And these people are getting in the way. They are not protesting, they are obstructing. They're blowing whistles, they're in the face of these people. I don't think you should go to a protest and obstruct law enforcement officials doing their job. I definitely don't think you should do it with a gun in your waistband. But I also think very clearly that these agents need to calm the hell down a bit, and they are a bit too trigger happy. I thought the shooting of Renee Good was unnecessary by the agent. I think the shooting of this man, Alex Pretty, was unnecessary. But I understand why it happens in the heat of the moment. And watching a video at 20% speed, 24 hours later, from 20 different angles, is very different from the heat of the moment. Someone shouts, gun. The people on the ground with these ICE agents clearly thought this guy had a gun on him, and they thought the gun that had fired was his. And then they're going, where's the gun? Where's the gun? And this agent goes, I've got the gun. He's already walked away with the gun. But I can understand why that happens. But the simple solution would be, don't get in the way of law enforcement officials doing their job.
Well, yeah, my attitude towards this is it is a tragedy, but if you play silly games, you win silly prizes. This is the United States.
Effed around, found out.
Everybody knows the police, federal law enforcement, everybody has a gun. Why would you insert yourself into a situation where you know these people have guns, you know that they are jumpy because they are being targeted? They're also being doxxed. This is something else that is happening, which is that protesters are finding out their home addresses, they're finding out where they're staying, they're finding their car registrations, they're harassing their families. This is not simply a,
this is why they hide their faces.
Yeah, this is exactly what, and I've got to say, like, and this is interesting because, as you touched upon, we're now in an age where you've got sort of 24-hour sort of surround sound. You can see all the footage. Everybody's got their phones out, and it does polarize. It doesn't matter what the evidence is. There will be people who, regardless of what they see, it's like watching a football match. You've got two people seeing the same VAR thing. You go, that's offside, and the other one goes, no, it isn't, even though they're seeing the same thing. It's a similar sort of thing. But I just have to say, it's that perception, isn't it, of what you think is morally justifiable. Ultimately, this is, as you say, a national policy. These are federal agents. They have the right to do this. These are criminals. What really, in that sense, is different to, I don't know, the US government sending the National Guard into the Deep South during the 60s to say they should be able to go to school, and the Klan saying no, and local members of the community saying, we side with the Klan.
No, but these are the good people, you see. They're the good people.
They're still breaking the law to defend criminals who are violent. I don't understand.
But also,
why
there's a
people
clear mandate. Donald Trump ran on that he was going to deport these people. He got elected with a clear. He won both houses of Congress and the presidency. He won the election. He has the mandate to carry out. This is the legal policy of the United States government. I don't understand why people think they've got a right to stop it. Here's my thing. I think this. I mean, it's very interesting. Obama and Clinton weighing in and talking about. Obama's got a bloody cheek, he really does. He said, this is a heartbreaking tragedy, I agree. It should also be a wake-up call to every American, regardless of party, that many of our core values as a nation are increasingly under assault. What your core value of allowing the borders to be completely open and criminals to stay among us in our neighbourhoods? I'm sorry, that's a load of abject, I'm be polite, nonsense. This is about the rule of law. And these so-called progressives and Democrats are basically arguing against the rule of law. President Obama deported under his government far more people than Donald Trump ever deported. But it wasn't an issue for the left because it was the nice man in the Parliament, in the White House, not their man. And here's the thing. This has repercussions here. When you've got numerous people on the left, and even, you know, frankly, you know, in the Conservative Party, Priti Patel talking about the Reform Party as National Socialist when it comes to economic policy. National Socialist, you mean Nazi? When we have routinely the Reform Party being called far right, fascist, you name it, by otherwise, you think, quite sensible, moderate people. They are setting us up for a situation where fighting against any policy that Reform brings in, even if they had a full majority, I mean, absolute majority, these were policies they'd put in their manifesto, the right to fight those both in Parliament, because they did it over Brexit, they didn't have the mandate for that, and they did it anyway, and on the streets, is justified because they're fascists, they're bad people, what they're doing therefore is automatically bad, and we are the good people, so right is on our side. We are being set up for these ICE shootings. I know we haven't got as many guns, but things can turn nasty. We are setting ourselves up right now for that to happen in the UK if Reform get elected. Mark my words.
I mean, the irony of all of this is how fascism happens. Because ultimately, and I don't say that in The Guardian sort of, this is how fascism happens, this is the route towards it.
That is how they speak.
How did Mussolini rise to power? As a bulwark against aggressive left-wing organisations. How did Franco come to power? As the bulwark against a communist revolution. How did Hitler come to power? Because he promised to put down left-wing insurgencies. Oh, yeah, with the threat of communism on the horizon. This is literally how fascism happens, when left-wing groups, left-wing politicians, left-wing movements decide, we're not going to play by the rules because you're all evil. And it's not the fascists they're talking about, it's the normal people. It's the voters, it's the petty bourgeoisie, it's the shopkeepers, it's the people who just want their property to be looked after and they just want the laws to be followed. And those people who don't believe in borders and don't believe in this and actively seek revolution, they go, well, we're not playing by the same rules, so we're just going to do what we want. And then that's when the right-wing backlash happens, and those people
then they're always surprised.
Always more violent and more organised by nature, and the government of the day says, please help us, and that is how it happens. And then we're going to sit there and go, who could possibly have seen this coming?
Exactly. I mean, watch it coming. I tell you what's fascinating. The BBC yesterday, 7 stories on this this killing by ICE agents. So on their front page, 7 stories. Yes, they were leading on, some of the time, were leading on the Andy Burnham story, which, by the way, okay, is a parochial story. No, it's about who might be the Prime Minister of our country in a few months' time. I mean, it's a pretty relevant, sodding story. But a second person being shot in Minneapolis Minneapolis. And by the way, ICE agents are going around the country. They are deporting, grabbing, in huge numbers of illegal foreign criminals off the streets. So only in Minneapolis where this is happening, where you're having these protests en masse. I'm just saying, there's a link there. But the Iran protests, okay, and the death toll and the emergence that we are looking at on just January the 8th and January the 9th alone, over 2 days, 30,000 civilians, pretty much entirely unarmed. Some of them may have been armed, we don't know, but largely young people, most of them tend to be under 30, were killed, shot dead, beaten to death by the Iranian government and their IRGC. Not a mention. Not a mention. Now, 30% of the internet was back up in Iran yesterday. So actually the videos were coming out, the pictures of the body bags piling high. What's going on? BBC, barely a mention. 7 different stories about one man being killed in Minneapolis. Does that one life matter more? I mean, of course, if a Jew had been involved, then they would have covered it. Let's be honest. If
a Jew had been involved, then you'd have had a story saying 10,000 Palestinians have also died.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be clear. I mean, did you know, out of curiosity, that the entire leadership of the Chinese military has been arrested over the past fortnight?
Yes, small point worth making.
Yeah, they've been accused of selling nuclear secrets to the United States. Xi Jinping is now in sole control of the armed forces. Did you know that? The final remaining general. Because if you looked on the BBC website, you'd have no idea that the world's second most powerful military is going through its most serious purge since Chairman Mao. You'd have no idea if you looked to the BBC.
Point, our Prime Minister is travelling to China tomorrow, just after a major purge. Apparently, this is like a childhood friend as well of Xi Jinping. This man, but put it this way, Keir Starmer and Xi Jinping are going to have quite a lot to chat about getting rid of rivals for the leadership. No, exactly.
But it's very, very, very. And the BBC, you would not know.
And again, and we talk about public service broadcast. This is exactly the sort of thing that you want the BBC. And again, I read all the Sunday, broadsheets. I've seen loads on this. But I mean, again, and it's one of the topics we're going to bring up later in the show because we want to cover these things. I mean, meanwhile, by the way, we've got police reforms which Shabana Mahmood says are going to solve everything.
Oh, nice.
They are not. We'll come to them later. But just summary, they're not. They're going to cost billions and nothing's going to change. I can tell you that right now. You know how I know that? Because every time they do this, that's what happens. A little bit later, rather, we're also going to be talking about the thousands turn out once again, and this is every Sunday now, to protest that asylum seeker camp at Crowborough. They've actually moved, young men in the dead of night. That tells you everything, doesn't it? And those protests are not going away. So we're going to be talking about that. Plenty more besides. I do want to hear from you. Keir Starmer's been out and about today talking about this Burnham by-election. Andy Burnham's doing a great job in Greater Manchester, but allowing him to run for this Westminster seat in Gorton would, he says, divert our resources from Labour campaigns in May's election. And by the way, they're already doing badly in those. Does it justify that? Is Keir Starmer weaker, stronger? Do you think Andy Burnham would make a better leader? I'd love to hear your thoughts on ICE as well. And again, my concern that the language, the way this is all being talked about in terms of talks about reform in the same way people talk about Trump back here is setting us up for exactly the same sort of clashes on our streets. Give us a call. Tell us what you think. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That
Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits. That's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:27 is the time, and let's get to your thoughts on Andy Burnham, ICE, you name it. Give us a call. Coming up just after 10:30, we are going to be talking to Labour MP Carl Turner, what he makes of that decision by the NEC. Let's face it, by Keir Starmer yesterday to block Andy Burnham's return to Parliament. Let's get your thoughts first. Chris is in Hereford. Chris, hello, what do you want to say?
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Basically, I think if Andy Burnham stood against Keir Starmer, I think Keir Starmer would get absolutely annihilated. And I think it's made him a lot weaker by doing if he.
Well, does it make him weaker? Because he's getting all the grief. Everyone's going he's weak, but he's also not likely in a few months' time to have, or a month's time, to have a challenger in Parliament who could, who's already basically set up for the challenge against him.
Yeah, as I said, it's just complete and utter mess at the moment, because the simple reason is, I don't know if Andy Burnham would have made a good Prime Minister. I really don't know, sort of thing. But the Labour Party ain't happy about it, are they, to be honest?
They are not. So we're going to talk to two Labour MPs who certainly don't seem happy about it. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, Andy Burnham is to the left of Keir Starmer. So if your criticism of Keir Starmer is he's not doing the reforms that are necessary, like, I don't know, cutting mad welfare spending and things like that, then hold your hats.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see who stands in that sort of by-election, because, as I said, I don't think Labour will win that by-election.
Not without a big name or a popular name like Burnham. Yeah, that's going to be the interesting. But their argument is, you know what, we might win the by-election with him, but we'll lose the morality. So, what choice?
I think that's what they're worried about.
Do we need an extra Labour MP? No, they don't. They've got a 400 odd. Yeah. Really interesting, Chris. Thank you for that. We get to some of your texts and tweets coming in this. Katie says the UK has become a dictatorship under Keir Starmer. Well, I mean, let's be honest, he's got form. I don't like these words being thrown around unnecessarily, but that the local elections being cancelled, was it 4.5 million now losing out those local elections? I'm really hoping that reform challenge works. Ricky says, what did you expect from a tyrant who cancels local elections to cling to power? Tony says anything that keeps Starmer in post until Labour is removed is welcomed by me. The alternatives are too horrifying for words. And Neil says Starmer must realise he is now politically a dead man walking. Stephen says I'm surprised he's not cancelling the by-election. And Yasmin says he really does hate democracy, doesn't he? Yeah, I mean, those are all fair summaries. Let's go to Cindy, who is in Michigan in the States. She wants to comment on those ICE agents. Cindy, what do you reckon on the latest shooting of a protester?
And Julia, always a brilliant show, always. And what I want to say is that the shooting, yes, it was a tragedy, but I wouldn't go at a protest and go with a gun to impede officers.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That's serious.
Didn't need to happen.
Bigger than the police.
Yep. I mean, I didn't like the whole he went to a woman. The woman got pushed, I thought, unnecessarily by a large man, and then he went. This guy pretty went to help the woman, and then they both got pepper sprayed. I thought the ICE agents were behaving fairly erratically and over the top, personally. But again, you don't know what's been happening before, but we do know there have been clear threats to the safety, indeed their lives, of ICE agents.
Yes, they're constantly getting pushed, shoved, hit,
threatened,
threatened, shouted at, whistles, horns. This is madness. It's crazy.
I mean, do you think it's been...
war scene?
So, carry on, sorry.
Oh, no, just I was saying it's just like a war scene.
Yeah. Do you think, though, this is being stirred up because Obama and Clinton are putting their tuppence worth in, saying, you know, our values are under attack? But Obama deported illegal foreign criminals. It's against the law to be a foreign criminal and be illegal in the country. I mean, it's enforcing the law with a mandate from the American people, and yet they seem to somehow be endorsing these protests, which have turned pretty physical.
Yeah, and you said it already brilliantly. You know, it was fine when Obama did it because he was the nice president, just like you said. And, okay, Trump is the big bad man who's breaking all the laws, okay? I don't think so.
I mean, he's enforcing the law. People want to campaign to change the law and say, these people believe in no borders and no one's illegal. That's fine. That's what you believe. That's fine. Campaign to change the law. Run for election on that. Good luck with that. But I think you'll find you haven't got the majority of American people behind you.
And don't go to a protest with a gun, please. And don't interfere in official ICE business.
Yep. Exactly. Legal ICE business, crucially. Cindy, very interesting call. Thank you very much. I'll leave you to a very early and cold Michigan right now. 10:33 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to the Labour MP for Hull East, Carl Turner, to find out what he, along with many other Labour backbenchers, thinks of that decision by Andy Burnham and other members of the NEC to block the return to Parliament, effectively, of the King of the North. And that, of course, is Andy Burnham. We'll talk to him up next. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's 10:34. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Benedict Spencer with me, joined, delighted to say now, by Labour MP for Hull East, Carl Turner. A very good morning to you, Carl.
Good morning, Julia. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks very much for joining us. Most of your colleagues are too fit to come on, so it's always nice to have a Labour MP willing to come on the show. Keir Starmer has been out defending his decision today to vote in the NEC to block Andy Burnham from leaving the Manchester mayoralty to stand in this Horton and Gorton by-election, saying, look, this is about funds, this is about your risk of losing a mayoralty as well. Is that a fair reason to have blocked Andy Burnham?
Well, look, I think the PM was in a very difficult position, actually. I think he couldn't really do right for doing wrong in this situation. I think the excuse will be that it was about the fact that a by-election for the mayoralty would be required, and that's costly, not just for the Labour Party, but for the taxpayer.
4 million, apparently.
It seems an awful lot of money, but my answer to that, Julia, is democracy is expensive, but it's very important. And if Andy Burnham, God love him, had have stood down because he had to stand down, i.e. he was ill or any other reason, that have had to have that democracy in order to ensure that we elect a person to represent the region as Greater Manchester Mayor. I think the honest answer from me would be the reason that he was blocked by the NEC, and they're entitled to do it, was because they thought he'd be a challenger against the leader and it'd be destabilising.
Destabilising for the Labour Party, destabilising for the country, or destabilising for Keir Starmer and his little coterie of mates in number 10?
Well, I think probably both, actually. I think if there's a contest against the leader of a political party who happens to be a PM, I think it destabilises the country, and I think the markets shift and there's a reaction. I think this psychodrama, which the electorate can't stand, it happened with the Tories. We've not learned from our recent history in politics in that regard. But the truth is, it was to stop Burnham, and that's just the reality, because they thought he might challenge Keir. I don't think he would. I think
you don't think he would?
I don't think he would. I think, look, there's no doubt that Andy Burnham has got ambitions in politics and he wants to be the PM. But there ain't a vacancy. You know, stop Burnham then.
That often, in my experience, been political journalists for a very long time, that they don't tend to always wait for a vacancy, and you know as well as I do, with facing a trouncing in the local elections in Wales and Scotland. Could see Labour wiped out, for goodness sake, possibly losing, you know, a by-election for the mayor of Greater Manchester as well, equivalent to 20 constituencies in the north, which is supposed to be the stronghold of Labour. I mean, there's no question at all. There will be a challenge to Keir Starmer, in which case, would Andy Burnham, were he an MP in Parliament, would he be your first choice as a replacement?
No, he wouldn't. It wouldn't be my first choice.
Who would be?
I don't want a contest, but I think what we need to do...
You don't want a contest?
I don't want a contest for the leadership. No, I want the PM to stay on and succeed. But I think we have to look to the reality of what's happened. Burnham was the favoured candidate in the sense that he was likely to win. I don't know if other candidates might win, but the only reason we exist as a party is to win parliamentary seats in order to govern. So we block the person who might have won in favour of an idea that he might potentially stand. Well, if that's our worry, every single MP in Parliament nearly has ambitions.
They do.
I mean, I don't want to be the Prime Minister, Julia. Honestly, I don't think I'm capable of doing the job.
I don't think a lot of the people who want to be Prime Minister are capable of doing the job, but I admire the honesty. But this is the thing.
The fact is, Julia, it's going to be me who's left, then, isn't it? Because most of them have got ambition. So what do we do? You know, and the other problem is this.
You could be the kingmaker.
The Labour Party allegedly are leaking that West Streeting 3 or 4 weeks ago was going to mount a challenge. Streeting denies it. And, you know, if Burnham was the elephant in the room they were worried about, they need to concentrate their attention on the elephant in the cabinet. Well, there might be more than one elephant in the cabinet.
Well,
we're
told that Andy Burnham reckons he needs any person who's running for the leadership would need 81 MPs to back them to stand. We're told that Andy Burnham had cleared 100. Wes Streeting's people apparently are claiming he's got 200. I mean, there are 400 odd MPs. There's quite a lot to go around. The question is, of course, who the Labour Party membership would want, and they tend to vote for candidates on the left. They're loving the likes of Ed Miliband right now.
Exactly. Dennis Skinner always used to say this to me. Why on earth do you think I get selected and elected for the NEC every 12 months? I said, I don't know, Dennis, tell me. He said, because they always vote left in the Labour Party. That's what they do.
That's a rather good impression, that is.
And it's true, I think.
But you said a few moments ago, you don't want there to be a Labour leadership contest. You don't want there to be a challenge, because what you want is the Prime Minister to stay on and to succeed. Do you think that Keir Starmer is capable? You said you wouldn't run to be Prime Minister because you don't think you're up to the job. Do you think he's capable of being a good Prime Minister? Because there's not much evidence of it so far. Are you yourself threatened to rebel on issues like the random, out-of-the-blue decision to scrap jury trials? He's had to U-turn. I think are we on 15 U-turns now? I lose track. He just throwing stuff, literally plucking things out of a hat and making these announcements. Everyone's going crazy, including his own backbenchers and supporters. It goes back in the hat. He U-turns. Is he even capable of doing a good job?
I think he is. I do. Truly, I do.
Really?
I think he's doing a good job on the international stage. I think he managed to get the US President Trump into a position where he semi-apologised for the insult on our
By all means,
British,
that was the king.
Soldiers and so on. It might have been the king as well. The king would be entitled to voice an opinion on that, in my view. So I think he's doing a good job. I think he's respected in the European Union as well.
They love him. They love him because he's bringing Britain back into the EU.
I think he's fostered good relationships there. On the domestic front, I have to be honest. I think the stuff that we are rebelling on is the stuff that was never mentioned in the manifesto, and it's the stuff that does come as a surprise to us. So I said to Keir, stop marching us up hills to march us back down again. I said to him directly, get rid of this daft idea on juries. It's not going to work. But please give us a bit of notice. Consult with the PLP. Give us a chance to argue and debate issue. That's not happening.
But isn't this the thing? So you think he's doing fine on the international stage? That, by the way, that includes the EU. We're no longer part of it. I know you lot are desperate to go back in, but yeah, he's doing fine because he most of the time basically just does what they want. But also he doesn't have to consult anybody about that. But you know, you think he's doing fine on what? Chagos Islands, surrendering those? Do you think he's doing fine on, I mean, basically not actually having the defences for our country? We're only at, what, 2.3%, climbing to 2.5% of spending on defence. I mean, you think he's doing well on that front?
No, I think that the polls suggest that we're not doing well on a lot of fronts, actually. But I'm not entirely convinced it's Keir Starmer's fault, because I think people around him have got a role to play.
But he appoints those people.
I think, well, I think that's
no, but
a fair question.
It's not like he hasn't got special advisors who've just been randomly plucked from nowhere. The man in charge, a man or woman in charge. Sorry, it's the Labour Party, so it's always a straight white man. You know the rules. A man in charge of the Labour Party. You're the ones obsessed with this stuff, and then always. And by the way, Andy Burnham, straight white man.
I know.
Where's at least he's gay? You know.
If there was a challenge on Keir Starmer, and I hope there's not going to be one, I would prefer a woman leader.
Why?
I think it's time the Labour Party had a woman.
Why?
I think women are great.
Why?
Because I think we've made excuses for too long about
why would a woman be better?
Well, because I think in my own personal relationship, my missus tends to be mild-mannered, doesn't panic, doesn't overreact, give me advice.
Is that a strong trait in female politicians?
I think women have got a tendency to calm things down to a frenzy, actually.
You met Liz Truss?
And not panic. I've met Liz.
This idea that women and all men have a different. You think all women, or most women, have that tendency? So women would be better in these jobs? I mean, with all due respect, it's a bit sodding patronising. Women are a certain way. I mean, are we good at washing up as well?
I'm better at washing up than my wife, I can tell you. But I think it is a bit patronising, and I don't mean it to sound like that. But why does it always have to be this man or that man?
I'll tell you why that is. I'll tell you why the Tories just accidentally, without even thinking about it, keep electing either women or people of colour or women and people of colour. It's because they don't care about this stuff. It's not relevant. So people get ahead based on their abilities, as opposed to you tick a box, you can do that. You tick a box, you can do that. That's why the Labour Party doesn't have top quality or women candidates, because you tick boxes. And because you don't actually, it's an actual serious problem within the Labour Party. Let's come back to some domestic policies there. Your Prime Minister, the man you think that is doing a good job and can be a successful Prime Minister, despite the fact he keeps appointing terrible advisors, he gives him terrible advice and following that advice and then backtracking on it, he has cancelled elections in... Well, he's allowed, because let's face it, it's up to him finally. He's allowed elections to be cancelled in 29 different local councils in May. They're going to be delayed. Some councils are going to serve 7 years in their terms instead of 4 years because of these elections being cancelled. And these are largely in Labour constituencies, in Labour councils, and that's largely them agreeing to that. 4+ million people are going to lose out on their right to vote. He's not a Democrat, is he?
Well, the policy decision on that was about those authorities which are potentially changing the makeup of the authority, i.e. unitary. And it was a decision made by council leaders.
They were given the option.
I agree, they were given the option. And that
was a decision by the government to give them the option.
It was.
So Keir Starmer's allowed it?
I think it was a mistake. I think it smacks of desperation. I think it sounds like it's undemocratic to people who want to vote in local elections. I think it was a mistake, but I wasn't advising the PM at the time, or indeed whoever it was in the cabinet which took the decision. I suspect it wasn't.
But he doesn't want a Greater Manchester mayor election. He doesn't want a leadership election. He doesn't want a local government election. He tried desperately to overturn the biggest vote for anything in this country's ever voted for, the 2016 referendum to leave Europe. He tried to overturn that for 3 years as Shadow Brexit Secretary. Have we just got a Prime Minister who doesn't really trust the British people?
Well, I think that's why this decision yesterday causes me real concern, because I think it does suggest that the Prime Minister is weak, not stronger. I wished it spoke to a strength of a leader who was prepared to have a challenge. I don't think it does. And I think the real honesty is, I think Keir Starmer, although it makes me worry, I think the potential for a leadership contest has got greater now as a result.
Very interesting. And do you think he'd win it?
I think people might be a bit surprised, because I think the Labour Party membership don't want all of this nonsense, and they want the PM, who is elected as the leader and Prime Minister, to continue. Look what happened when we tried to get rid of Corbyn. The membership were very cross with us. They kept the leader of the Labour Party because that person was the leader. I think Starmer, I honestly believe this. I think Starmer would probably win if it meant a contest in the membership.
Yeah, but he'd have to get that. He could already be out by the MPs first, couldn't he? Carl Turner, it's so interesting to talk
no, because he gets automatic right to stand as the leader.
That's a good point.
If it was a contest, he would be in the race.
Yeah, but if you've lost the majority of the Parliamentary Labour Party, that's not going to look good, is it? We will discuss this another day, as and when it happens. Labour MP for Hull East, Carl Turner. Thank you very much indeed for that. Very quick word from Benedict Spence.
I was just sort of terrified for Carl when he started talking about what women may or may not be like.
Seriously, none of those were my traits.
But no, it's sort of amusing though to then sort of get down into the nitty gritty, of course, because then we're talking about, well, he's saying that he thinks that if there were to be a contest, that Starmer would probably win it. You're kind of looking around and saying, actually, who really is there? Apart from Burnham, we all know that Streeting is very ambitious, but people don't like that in the Labour Party. They've got the same problem that the Tories did right at the end. Yeah. There's just a dearth of alternatives.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that interview. 0344 499 1000. Up next, the brilliant Andrew Fox going to be talking about what reform may well be doing for veterans. We're going to be talking about the Chagos silence. And Donald Trump and ICE. This is Talk.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me every weekend from 6 a.m. for the stories that matter to you. We talk politics, we talk news, we talk entertainment, we talk about everything that affects your life. There's only one place to start your weekend, the home of common sense. Talk Breakfast on Talk. 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every Friday, Saturday and Sunday here on the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:50 is the time. Let's go to my next guest, Andrew Fox. He's a Senior Associate Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society. He's also a former Major in the Parachutes Regiment. And I want to talk to him about, a huge number of military and foreign affairs stories with very little time. Andrew Fox, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Yeah, it's been a lively weekend, hasn't it?
It certainly has been a lively weekend. Shall we start with this extraordinary story that at the end of last week, was talking about it on my show, about veterans in Northern Ireland. We're talking decades and decades later, basically facing private prosecutions for basically doing their job whilst in uniform, carrying out orders in a way that we've got an amnesty for, if you're in the IRA or any other paramilitary organisation, as of the Good Friday Agreement, you've basically basically got an amnesty. If you were in prison, you were let out. If you were on the run, you were allowed to come back, and no more prosecutions. But opening up for more prosecutions of veterans many years on for doing their job. What do you make of that?
Well, look, Northern Ireland was a really unpleasant conflict, and lots of very unpleasant things happened. And you know what? I don't support a blanket amnesty for British soldiers who do things wrong on operations. That's what sets us apart from the terrorists. The issue here is that it's 50 years later. And to give you an idea of how complex and chaotic these conflict situations are, I was in firefights in Afghanistan, and at the end of them, I can remember one particularly where my section commanders and I couldn't even agree on which direction enemy fire was coming from.
Yeah.
And that was 5 minutes afterwards. So the idea that you can achieve justice after 50 years over some things that are so complex and complicated is just ridiculous. And as you say, it's a total dual standard, with the IRA getting a free pass and our poor veterans getting hounded through the courts on almost no evidence.
No, indeed, and we know. I mean, this has happened with Iraq and Afghanistan, and we know this is happening closer to home now. And it's interesting. Reform this morning, they got a press conference. They've been writing about it, basically saying we are going to, if we get into power, we are going to stop this from happening. And this isn't, again, it's crucial. This is not about soldiers who've committed clear and obvious crimes, war crimes, you know, murdering someone in cold blood with no reason. We're talking about heat of the battle, confusion. I mean, we're talking Ice Age scenarios here, aren't we, in Minneapolis? But again, many, many years after the fact.
Yeah, and there was protection for British veterans in place under the Conservatives. They brought in legislation. Johnny Mercer particularly fought very hard to get that in. And of course, Labour have reversed that. So Labour have changed that rule, and clearly Reform are promising to bring it back in.
Well, they're saying it's incompatible with the European Convention on Human Rights. It's amazing how often the ECHR comes up, isn't it?
It is, and it's also misapplied because other countries don't have this problem. I mean, look at the football match in Birmingham with Maccabi Tel Aviv. The suggestion was that we should do what they do in every European country, which is safely transport football fans to the ground from wherever they were beforehand, in coaches or on a train, whatever. Apparently, we couldn't do that in the UK because it's ECHR incompatible, and yet they do it in Europe all the time. I've been to Rotterdam away with Aston Villa, and that's what happened. My friends were in Turkey last week. Exactly the same thing happened, and yet because of the ECHR, apparently we can't. It makes no sense at all.
It's genuinely painful, isn't it? It really is. Well, again, it's always a foreign court that seems to be blamed. Again, one of the reasons I voted for Brexit was like, I don't want foreign governments to decide. I don't want foreign courts to decide our policy here either. Foreign court also implicated, of course, in the Chagos Islands deal. It was the International Court of Justice with an advisory decision on whether or not we should, for no good reason at all, hand over the Chagos Island, including the Diego Garcia base, to the Mauritians, of course, hand in glove with the Chinese, no doubt pushing them to this. But at the end of last week, suddenly everything was just completely thrown up in the air when it emerged that the agreement to relinquish sovereignty of the islands and lease back the Diego Garcia military base was basically going to be, basically pulled. The House of Lords bill they were supposed to be debating, with the legislation expected today, delayed after they were told that it could violate a 60-year-old treaty with the US. Suddenly the Americans, thanks, we understand in part to Nigel Farage in a conversation he had with the Treasury Secretary, have woken up to the Chagos Islands deal and the defence implications for not just Britain, America, but also the West as a whole. Is this to be welcomed?
Well, I certainly think so. I mean, it's really interesting, actually, that the Americans hadn't picked up on this beforehand. I think that's the most interesting aspect of this. Yeah. Because Diego Garcia is a strategic base for them. It's really important. They launch a lot of bombers from there. It gives them reach into the Pacific and the Middle East. And so it was always confusing to me that they would have agreed to this in the first place.
They signed off on it. We've had White House statements signing off on it. It's quite bizarre.
Yeah, very strange. And look, international law, this is the problem with the entire piece, is that it's entirely optional. And you can either slavishly adhere to it, or you can do as our enemies do, and that is completely disregard it. So it's tying our hands behind our back, making us less safe, whilst our enemies run around laughing at us.
Well, indeed, and they absolutely are they not? And again, a huge cost. We understand a huge amount of the sums of money which we're told we're spending more on defence in the wake of that. Trump's demands for Europe to start funding some more of its own defence would actually be those payments to the Mauritian government for the privilege of leasing back the airbase we already own. I mean, when you explain this to people, it's so utterly bewildering and perplexing. People think you're making it up. Something I think a lot of people thought must have been made up was Donald Trump and his extraordinary words last Thursday on Fox News, talking about about the American military and their support from other NATO troops. He said he was not sure that America's military allies would support the United States. He said, if we ever needed them. He said, we've never needed them. We've never really asked anything of them. They'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan, and they did. They stayed a little back, a little off the front line. Now, this sparked absolute fury online from veterans and those of us who support veterans as well, given 457 British service personnel did die on the front line in Afghanistan, as did many other NATO allies, Denmark in particular, news about Greenland. Donald Trump has sort of backtracked, saying that basically the British troops are among the greatest of all warriors, were great and very brave. Is that enough?
Well, of those 450 plus you speak about, double figures of them were my friends. So that was quite a personally taken comment.
And many hundreds more had life-changing injuries as well, thousands more.
Yeah, and I know I've got friends who've lost both legs. I've got friends who lost their eyesight. So yeah, this was truly shameful. It was a non-apology from Trump.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't accept it at all, especially not from a man who dodged military service 5 times with bone spurs. But look, I think a lot of this was playing to his domestic crowd. I have MAGA friends in America who hate NATO. Yep. This is clearly, trying to shore up his base. But as ever with Trump, he doesn't think even slightly about the second or third order implications of what he says. And he's done real lasting, almost irreversible damage to the NATO alliance at this point. Not only with threatening an ally and also running them down. It's very, very poor.
He's always been very dismissive of the military, actually very unusual in an American president. Like, these people are mugs for going to war, risking their lives. I mean, yeah, just because you weren't brave enough to do so, sir. Just finally, really briefly, there's these battles in Minneapolis as ICE agents. I mean, these are law enforcement agents. But we've got guns involved. You've been in war. Everyone's making judgments, watching videos, slow speeds, from every angle, 24, 30, 48 hours later. What do you make of the row over this?
I'm not rushing to judgment, has been my position. I think it's an insane situation that you have immigration enforcement in a position to kill people. That just shows you the state that America is in right now. Yeah. But as I said right at the top, these are chaotic, difficult situations, and I'm not going to rush to judgment until the facts are out. But I do hope that the Americans investigate this properly, as they should. Yeah. And as they declined to do with the shooting of Renee Good a few weeks ago. So that's really important, that due process is followed. But
I always think, people who've actually been in those scenarios have a much more useful input, and virtually everybody who has been in these sort of scenarios, whether in war or on the streets as a police officer, will say, you know what, you don't know until you've been there, and you've got all the witness statements later on. I really appreciate your perspective on everything there, Andrew Fox. Thank you very much indeed. Lots more to come, more from Benedict Spence. We're going to be talking more about the Crowborough, the protests that are still ongoing against that asylum camp, and plenty more besides. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your Connect device, thank you so much for joining us. Lots more to talk about. If you do miss anything from the show, go to my YouTube page. It's called the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You can hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing more about Andy Burnham being blocked by the Labour Party from standing in an upcoming by-election. Has this made Keir Starmer weaker or stronger? Love to hear your thoughts on that. Plus the second fatal shooting of a protester in Minneapolis by ICE agents, as well as it completely divided America and it seems most of Britain as well. And the number of graduates claiming benefits has risen to 700,000, and 1/3 of them, guess what? Mental health problems. Of course they have. And of course, we'll be talking about the thousands protesting in Crowborough every Sunday now against migrants being housed in the town's former army barracks. Of course, we actually saw some of those first arrivals bust in overnight, which tells you everything about what the authorities are doing before those protests. We'll talk about that coming up with a local councillor. Do get in touch. Love to hear your thoughts on any and all of the stories. We'll get to your calls coming up very, very soon. But Keir Starmer blocking Andy Burnham from standing in the Gordon and Denton by-election. They come up with lots of different reasons. They all seem quite reasonable, or is he just kind of frit, doesn't like democracy? Local elections, by-elections, leadership elections, not keen on any of it, is he, apparently, Keir Starmer? Referendums on the EU, not keen on that either. What's your reaction? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. Love to hear your thoughts on that second killing by ICE agents in Minneapolis. Not happening anywhere else. What is going on in Minneapolis? Maybe protesters are getting too in the face of people with guns, especially if they've got a gun themselves. Whose side are you on? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Delighted to say Benedict Spence is still here. We locked the studio door to keep him. Conservative commentator. Give us his tuppence wealth and everything. Can I give people some advice there, Benedict, before I bring you in? Which is, if you're going to come as a guest on the show, as the Labour MP Carl Turner jested, best make sure your wife's not listening, eh? Because he was talking about how the next Labour leader, he wants Keir Starmer to stay on. If you missed it, worth a listen. He's talking about how he wants the Keir Starmer to stay on as Prime Minister and to succeed. We got into a conversation about who the next leader would be, and I said, would it be a white straight man? Of course it would be. And he said, no, we think we need a woman. I just said, why do you think Labour always says a woman would be better? Why? And he was explaining how, women, like his wife, have all these certain traits and be much better.
Calm, docile.
Calm. Yeah, we're calm, docile. We're good at, and I'm thinking, well, I don't recognise that trait in me. He did just send me a message saying, I won't tell you the exact words his wife used to him because I don't think I can repeat those on there. The missus telling me I messed up, shall we say, on the on preferring a woman's leader. He did give me permission to tell you that. I wouldn't repeat a private message. But yeah, he got in a bit of trouble with the missus. Just saying, you want to be careful. Benedict Spence. Let's go back to the substantive issue here.
Thank you for not making me talk about women and what their traits are.
Please don't
I'd
do
be
that.
in big trouble.
For the love of God, man. For the love of God.
I might say what I actually think.
Yeah, exactly. It's a by-election in Gordon and Denton. It could be as soon as the 26th of Feb. I mean, it could be in a month's time. But basically, there's going to be a by-election because this former health minister stood down because he got done for some dodgy texts and WhatsApps. I don't think people should be ousted for private messages. Otherwise, I'll be out of a job very soon as well. But basically, the person who wanted to stand was Andy Burnham, but he's the very successful, very popular mayor of Greater Manchester, won on a landslide back in the spring of 2024. Only 2 years into his job, it's the second term, he says, I want to run for the by-election for this MP job. I want to be back in Westminster. We all know why he wants to be back in Westminster, because he wants to run for leadership against Keir Starmer in the event of the local elections, as everyone expects, Scottish and Welsh elections being an absolute trouncing of the Labour Party. However, he had to, under Labour Party rules, ask permission from the Labour ruling body, the NEC. They met yesterday, 10 of them. Keir Starmer happening to be there, not busy dealing with world affairs, happened to be there, and they decided that no, by 8-1 votes, 1 abstention, Shabana Mahmood, the chair of the meeting, that he could not stand. Their argument being and Keir Starmer's out and about today saying this, that they blocked him, saying a by-election for the role of Manchester Mayor, because he couldn't be both MP and be Mayor of Manchester, was unnecessary. He said Burnham was doing a great job as Manchester Mayor. He said, but having an election for the Mayor of Manchester, when it's not necessary, would divert our resources away from the elections that we must have, then we must fight and win. And he says they must be focused on the elections, local elections. Also, there's a £4 million bill for Manchester taxpayers if there's a by-election. Perfectly good reason, fair enough, move on, right?
Up to a point, yes. I mean,
it's all legitimate reasons.
I mean, the cost is not a legitimate reason, I don't think. Yeah, as Carl Turner, your guest earlier, said, democracy is important and it's also very expensive, and that's kind of how we do it. We accept that actually you don't have a dictatorship just because it's cheaper to. That's not how it works at all.
Although they tend not to work out cheaper, what with all the palaces and the killing.
That's true, actually. That's a good point. When you're sat there looking at the Dacia on the Black Sea going, oh, that was rather expensive, wasn't it? When they're fleeing to Switzerland in the back of a... Well, anyway, we're getting slightly off topic and thinking about how it's actually going to end for Keir Starmer. It's one of those things where you better hope that they have a very good candidate for this by-election, because they are going to look like mugs if they lose it to Reform or the Greens, both of which are real possibilities. So I do understand the whole thing about wanting the stability, and Burnham does have a very large profile as Mayor of Manchester, fine.
But you'd rather lose the by-election?
What that's saying is that they'd rather lose the by-election than well, not even than Manchester, because I still think ultimately it would be a fantastic opportunity for somebody to take on that mantle. It's not going to be an unknown person who would have replaced Burnham. But the point is,
Reform
you would have
very
been
likely to win.
Very likely, but we don't actually know yet who the alternative candidate would be. But the point is, Burnham, obviously a threat. Starmer, deeply unpopular. He understands that. He's shut this down. Burnham, let's say he had been elected, because there's nothing to say he actually would have won the election, because Reform would have thrown the kitchen sink at that, and I reckon actually the Greens would have as well.
Absolutely.
Had he been elected, absolutely. Had he won it and become an MP, and then challenged Starmer, and then won, he doesn't actually fix any of the underlying problems with the Labour Party. What he does do is he gives them a much more personable leader, he gives them a little bit of a shot in the arm, he gives them a little bit more energy, but the fundamental problems are still the makeup of the parliamentary party. That wouldn't have been changed at all. So we'd have had a little sort of bounce, a bit like when a new manager comes in at a football club. You get that sort of new manager feel, everybody's a bit more invigorated, you get 3 wins on the bounce, you think, oh, maybe it's changed, and then no, because the players still aren't good enough. And that's ultimately what we're talking about. The players are not good enough.
He's run for this job twice before, and he was nicknamed Flip-Flop Andy, because he was a Blairite, he was left, he was like, no one really knows what he stood for. Great eyelashes, though. I mean, God, great eyelashes. Give him credit, he's got great eyelashes. I really like the guy. He's very personable.
He is a nice man.
He's a good communicator. I mean, Keir Starmer, whenever he starts speaking, genuinely, you just sort of lose the will to live. And even like he's making a major statement, and often you think, well, did he say something important? I couldn't stay awake. Whereas Andy Burnham is just very personable. He played a blinder during the lockdown on behalf of the people of Greater Manchester who weren't getting the help that other, London would have got more obviously, because the whole, Westminster is so focused on London. So he's good at that. However, major issues against him. Again, he's flip-flop Andy. He's further to the left.
Yeah.
Apparently in talks, Angela Rayner back as Deputy Prime Minister. She wants to be the kingmaker. She can bring all our little supporters. Ed Miliband, who denies this, of course. Ed Miliband, the lunatic Net Zero Secretary, as the Chancellor. You thought Rachel Reeves was bad? Who can't sodding add up and hasn't got a clue what she's doing, doesn't even know what job she's done. Seriously? Ed, genuinely, the country is finished in a week. I give it a week.
I was going to say, the options are one Chancellor who has to count on her fingers and another one who says, baby, where we're going, we don't need fingers. We're all going to be dead.
Seriously, we'll be back in caves by the end of the week, guys.
Honestly.
The bond market. Andy Burnham thinks we shouldn't have to rely on the bond markets. I hate to tell you, mate, all governments rely on the bond market. It's how you pay for everything, mate. And he genuinely thinks, we can tax more rich people. They're all gone. There aren't enough of them, and they'll go. Things ain't. There is nothing that would get better other than a little bit of the PR from Andy Burnham. Now, I am told reliably by someone in his circle that Andy Burnham is having a meeting today with his allies, with his advisors about what to do next. Now, he must have known there was a jolly good chance that if he put his hat in the ring to run for this seat, Gorton and Denton, in the Manchester area, of course, that he would be blocked by the Prime Minister from standing. He must have had, plan B. But he could be blocked every single time.
You can.
Because there is a rule in the Labour Party, you cannot run for a seat and be a mayor.
The thing is, if he keeps on doing this and people keep on giving up their seats for him, it does, I think, begin to demonstrate that people are deeply unhappy with Keir Starmer. But of course, that's only about getting onto the selection process. Actually, if he were to then stand... I mean, there was the talk about Clive Lewis giving up his seat in Norwich South, and you just think... Actually, I know that Norwich is like a little sort of bastion of left-wingness in what is becoming a quite, stark sea of turquoise in East Anglia. But again, I think that those people would look at that and go, hang on, we really are being taken from marks here.
How many Labour MPs are willing to give up their pay?
There's at least two.
Yeah, there's at least... Yeah, but
they're doing that on the promise
but
that this one is
Andrew
obviously...
Gwynn basically was being forced out anyway.
And Clive Lewis
Here's
would be
the other
doing
thing.
it on the promise that something else would come along.
This is best for the Labour Party, whatever, best for the country. Is it best for, most importantly, Keir Starmer? Does this weaken him? Does this strengthen him?
Everything weakens Keir Starmer at this moment.
Keir Starmer
I've got to be. He wakes up in the morning and sees the weakness. It's one of those where ultimately the only play where this works out for Keir Starmer is actually quite a difficult one. It would have been to have let Burnham run and hope against hope that he then lost the seat. Because then, of course, he's completely neutered. Every time he's
I did my best.
Exactly. And, of course, there are ways of making that more likely. You make sure that the resources aren't there. People aren't available to come and do photo shoots or that sort of thing. And, I don't know, maybe you release something particularly unpopular that week about what the party's been up to.
Well, I tell you what, another thing you can focus on, again, a lot of people, Maggie Oliver, who's just been brilliant on this issue on the grooming gangs, they consider Andy Burnham to be part of the problem. She was the one who exposed the Rochdale, in the Greater Manchester area, grooming gang scandal. And she's gone to him many times. She has said repeatedly that, he was someone who was blocking a public inquiry, blocking this, blocking that, and actually he's part of the problem, not part of the solution. That is a big issue for a lot of people. That's the sort of thing that swings elections on the balance, doesn't it? OK, so, the key thing is, with the Prime Minister, he's off to China. You mentioned a little bit earlier, he's off to China today. I remember thinking back to 1990, because I'm that old, Margaret Thatcher, there actually was a leadership contest in process, and there everything's so fine. I'm off in Paris, and then of course things we fight on. Things didn't go quite according to plan. Matt, perhaps not a good idea. We know never hear Keir out the country, but interestingly, bit of a worry being in China after, as you mentioned earlier, this purge by Xi Jinping. Now, there was a big debate on the sort of lefty social media yesterday about why is everyone talking about Andy Burnham? The big story is what's happening in America with the ICE agents slaughtering people. Donald Trump's a fascist, blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't be bothered, but I should have messaged. I think you'll find, in terms of things that will actually affect our lives in the future and the world, Xi Jinping, the president of China, having basically ousted now every single one of anyone who had any chance of having any sort of
senior military role.
Well, not just military. I mean, basically, there's the Politburo, effectively equivalent, isn't there? The Chinese Communist Party, and then there's the military, and they're basically in charge of everything. He's purged the final general, a childhood friend, apparently. He's purged him. He's the last of the purges. I mean, everyone is gone. It's just Xi Jinping, full stop now. That's going to have a different policy.
It's really interesting because Xi Jinping came to power on the basis that he made friends throughout the military. The military was his big backers. And now, as you say, he is going sort of from door to door. But of course, a lot of this is based on the idea that, look, the official line that's coming out, well, not the official line, but the one that's being spun to the press is these people were talking to the United States and they were giving away nuclear secrets and strategic secrets. Is that likely? Almost certainly not. It sounds like the sort of thing you'd come up with if you wanted an excuse for getting rid of your top generals. The other suggestion is these people were trying to move against Xi Jinping. There is a lot of factionalism. Xi Jinping is not a dictator in the truest sense. There is a bit like in the Labour Party. There are lots of factions, lots of different competing groups of people that all want different things within the sort of the broad remit of communism. Xi Jinping has been in a bit of a precarious situation, which is why he keeps on having to shore up his power, because if he takes his eye off the ball for 2 seconds, there's another faction coming for him. Starmer is walking into this situation at the most febrile time when there are all kinds of rumours swirling about what actually happened.
He thinks the Chinese are our friends and we should give them a nice big embassy.
Right now, I'm not even sure
city.
Xi Jinping remembers that Keir Starmer is coming because he has much bigger problems going on. I mean, he doesn't even stay in the same place more than 2 nights in a row.
So it's quite difficult to have that meeting.
But exactly.
Is it going to be a long white table like Putin's got?
There's a very funny meme going around at the moment, which is the only other general left in China is at one end of the Putin table and Xi Jinping's things there with a megaphone, telling him,
This is the thing. Once again, Keir Starmer, we've got a load of problems going on in this country, and Keir Starmer is off gallivanting around the world, and again, kowtowing. We use that phrase a lot because it's true to the Chinese. I mean, again, but absolutely fascinating. The other big story, it was fascinating, these ICE agents, another protester, this is Alex Pretty, he has been killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis. These ICE agents are working around the entire country. They are carrying out federally mandated work to go in and arrest. They're not just there's this impression that the lefties, they call themselves progressives, they're not progressive, they're giving, that these are just like sort of basically Rambo soldiers let loose in local neighbourhoods, rounding up anybody who's got a brown skin. I mean, that's literally the way they're playing it, and therefore these are fascists, and this is something that we should stand up against, and we are the good people. Whatever we do is justified. That is literally what they're saying online. This is not true. This is a government policy which used to be carried out by Obama and every previous president, happened under Biden as well, but just to a very limited extent, of deporting people who have no right to be in the country, had no right to enter the country, or we have in this country, you're a foreign criminal, and therefore you have to be deported. They're going around to get specific people who have been told you have no right to be in the country. They're going in. The reason why they are armed to the teeth, the reason why they cover their faces, is because they've been doxed and identified. Their families have been threatened. Their homes have been attacked by protesters on the left who think that's okay to do that. They are federally mandated by a president elected by the people with a mandate on this manifesto to do this, to carry out a policy that is the law of the land and already was before he became president. And no one was protesting when Obama was doing it, but now because it's Trump, it's a fascistic move. These people are out on the streets, they're blowing whistles, they're in the face, they're screaming, they're shouting abuse, they're saying threats. They're being told by the left that it's okay to threaten these people. These people are now effectively being backed by Obama and Clinton, who've written statements saying, this is in danger of losing our, our fundamental rights. But at the end of the day, don't try and stop a federal agent doing his sodding job. Definitely don't do it when you've got a gun in your back pocket. This won't happen. I still think he shouldn't have been shot. I still think that the Rihanna Good should not have been shot when she was in her car. I think that was an overreaction. But I'm not that sympathetic to these protesters.
These people live in the United States. They ought to know better than anybody. The law enforcement carry guns. I don't know what you expect. And famously, that a lot of them can be quite trigger happy. I don't know why this is a surprise. And that's at the best of times. That's during things like traffic stops. But, I mean, the thing is, a lot of this, what we're seeing now is the end result of the things that we talk about and have spoken about for a very long time. Politics on campuses in the United States, with this idea that actually there is a different set of rules because you are virtuous and therefore you can behave a certain way, and the other lot are fascists, and you call them fascists because it justifies whatever you do. That is now manifesting itself from the college campus over the last 10, 15, 20 years, is now the real world policy of a lot of these people. They genuinely believe this. They live in that same sort of fancy world because an awful lot of these people are college educated. You can just see the way they behave, the way they protest. It's the same thing that they used to do 10, 15 years ago when they were talking about things like gender or feminism or whatever.
I'm triggered.
Exactly. And it is now manifesting itself. It has metastasized into real life. And the response, and I think that these people are, finding out, so to speak, because the US government is not some weak sort of college campus that's just authority that's going to just say, oh, okay, fine, you're very important to us, please don't be upset. These people have guns. These people are the law. These people are the enforcement.
And they're a bit fed up with being shouted in their faces.
And we're not on a campus anymore where almost everybody agrees on the politics. Half of the country, more of half of the country.
This ain't Kansas anymore.
Exactly. They are right-wing. They are. A lot of these people are very tooled up. They have a certain view of how the country should be. And it just, honestly, how it can be that people are so surprised that if you break the law and you go to these protests and you support people who are criminals, you might come face to face with these people.
The protest is legal. Interfering with law enforcement agents doing their job is not legal. And even if it's legal to carry a gun, this guy was licensed and everything, it's just probably not a very good idea. And why are you carrying a gun to a protest? I mean, again, this is the way, and this is the reason why these agents are so trigger. And I'm sorry, they are trigger happy because they are jumpy. Why are they jumpy? Because of what has happened and the threats that are online. And I can absolutely understand that they are carrying out the law. If you don't like the law, campaign to change the law. Run for office. Support the parties that want to do something different. And if you absolutely believe there are no borders and no one is illegal and everyone should be allowed to live anywhere they want, commit any crimes they want, and not be deported, that's fine. But that ain't the policy. That's not. That is not and never has been the law of the land in America, whether you like the president or not. And as I was saying to you earlier, my big worry is this is all being set up to happen here. Now, we may not have our immigration agents with guns. We may not have our police largely with guns, and they've said it, made it very clear they don't want to have them. But you know, enough people get injured on our streets. I am very, very worried about the protests that are going to come if and when Reform get elected, or say Reform, Tory coalition, or Tory coalition, whoever is. But anyone who gets elected to the next election, I can tell you right now, is going to be deporting foreign criminals. I will work for any government and put the people on the plane myself. I have no issue with that. And there is going to be exactly the same reaction from the left, and they're going to be threatening people, and they are going to justify it by the fact that they argue that anyone doing this is a fascist, and therefore they are justified in doing anything at all to stop it. That is terrifying.
Yeah, I was having a conversation about this with Tom Slater, another guest of the show who's on regularly, and I was saying that I think that this is the direction that Europe will head in, which is to say that we will actually have genuine fascism in Europe at some point, because this is what happens. When left-wing organisations behave like that, normal people get fed up. They see law and order breaking down, and the state gets fed up because it feels hamstrung. What then fills that void? It is right-wing organised groups. That is literally how Mussolini came to power. It is literally how Franco did. It is literally how Hitler
the left-wing. It was the BLM. It was Antifa.
It is always. You know, fascism is a reaction.
It's the pro-Palestinian mob. They're all the same.
Is a reactionary ideology from people who are fed up and want the restoration of law and order. With that comes nasty elements,
You need to keep law and order.
If the left has pushed you to a certain extreme, people will open the door to right-wing extremists, because they do justifiably look at the two and go, at least that one promises me law and order.
Yeah,
that is the choice that you don't want to force people to.
But then when you go around calling Nigel Farage a fascist and a Nazi, which has been going far right, I mean, they will think they think I'm those things as well. My views are so... They are so mainstream. If you go back to like 1997, my views haven't really changed. No. The parties have just all shifted so far left.
But Farage has said this himself. If you think that I'm bad, you wait until actually what comes after me if I don't succeed. He said that this is what reform has to be, because if it doesn't work out, it will be something worse.
Absolutely.
And I don't understand why people don't heed the warning.
And we know that we haven't got law and order on our streets. We have Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, putting all his tuppence worth in about, we got murder down by a couple. Oh, brilliant. Oh, well done. We're all fine then. And I didn't get my bag stolen, and other people didn't get their phones stolen, and no one's getting mugged. And I mean, girls and women aren't being stalked and sexually assaulted on the streets. No, that's all a figment of our imagination. Well, solution to all this, according to Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, is basically the biggest police reforms in 200 years. Are they taking 43 police forces down to 12? Also instigating this new British FBI, about this National Police Service, to deal with serious crime, and then also having these local neighbourhood police dealing with ordinary day-to-day, your shoplifting, your burglaries and the like. And we're told this is going to, it's going to save money, it's going to be more police on the streets. I mean, I think we know it's not going to save money. I think we know it's not going to be more police on the streets. I think we know it's not going to end up happening exactly as she says it's going to happen. And things are going to get all bogged down in the reforms. And this has been tried and announced. I mean, there's a really interesting piece by Robert Colville, who is a very, very, very wise soul at the a think tank, and also writes the Sunday Times. And he has pointed out something like this was tried by Charles Clarke Labour in 2006. Similar announcements 1995, 2004, 2011 and 2016, and there may have been others. This keeps on happening, but it doesn't actually solve crime. We just need more police officers solving the crimes we actually care about. Oh yeah, she also says she's going to get rid of non-crime hate incidents. No, she's not. 2 Tory Home Secretaries tried that, didn't happen.
Yeah, honestly, it's all you hear is the talk about how these reforms are ultimately going to be the thing that improves policing, when actually what it is about policing is resources. It's people able to attend incidents like this. And I don't see how it is that, streamlining all of these police forces by amalgamating them into larger groups, with therefore more people with more oversight over fewer officers, because that is what will happen, having to cover more territory. That is not going to make it easy. If anything, you need to be breaking them down into more so that you can target these things more. And then the idea of some sort of overarching FBI, what's that going to be used against? Well, honestly, we all know what that's going to be used against. That's people saying things online.
That's what it always ends up being. I tell you what, you could improve police efficiency simply, genuinely, by teaching them all to touch type and having everything seriously though, and having everything online instead of them writing everything down. It's the biggest waste of time. The amount of time that's spent on admin and form filling that does no service to justice is absolute joke. Here's an idea: if you caught some criminals and actually put them behind bars, there wouldn't be so much crime because the criminals be behind bars because half of all crime is committed by about 100,000 people. Just a thought, Home Secretary. Throwing that mad idea out there. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the big topics, in particular about Andy Burnham, in particular also about the ICE agents. I'd love to know what you make of those particular stories, but as you know, the phone lines are open to you to have your say on anything you want to talk about. 0344 499 1000. Get in touch and we'll hear your calls up next. This is Talk.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me every weekend from 6 a.m. for the stories that matter to you. We talk politics, we talk news, we talk entertainment, we talk about everything that affects your life. There's only one place to start your weekend, the home of common sense. Talk Breakfast on Talk. 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every Friday, Saturday and Sunday here on the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to your calls. Interestingly, again, same as last hour, lots of calls coming in on Andy Burnham, lots of calls also coming in on those ICE agents, two big stories leading the news. Coming up in a moment, we're going to talk to the Institute of Fiscal Studies, former director, Paul Johnson, about graduates on benefits. I mean, even a university degree doesn't stop you being on benefits these days. Not if you've got mental health problems, eh? First up there, let's go to Herbie in Harrow. Herbie, what do you make of Keir Starmer blocking Andy Burnham standing in this by-election?
Julie, what a joke he is. He's a coward. Goes to show he's in control and he's going to do everything he can to stay in power regardless. He's undemocratic and he's a complete and utter waste of space. The man should be out anyway. It shows much he's running scared of the public, what they have an opinion on. He does not like anybody that has an opinion that might be a threat to him. Yeah. Well, nobody likes to be threatened.
He really doesn't like even being questioned by journalists. He goes to like a press conference and the people ask him questions and he's like, you can see him sort of riled, like, how dare you ask me a question?
Yeah, exactly. Julie, he's a man that is complete and utter waste of space. It shows you how much he's running scared. There was no guarantee that Andy Burnham would have been elected anyway.
That would have been the fun. That would have been the comedic outcome, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean to say, it just goes to show how much this man wants to remain in power, to control and make our life a misery.
Okay, you don't want him as leader. Okay, it's not going to be anyone but a Labour Party MP. So who do you want?
Well, I certainly don't want the Labour Party, and that's a dead cert.
No, but that's who's elected. They've got the majority. They ain't going to be out anytime soon. Who would you prefer?
Well, there's none of them really I would like. I mean, to say they're all a bad case. Whichever way you look at it, you know, whoever you're going to get, it's not going to be any better than what it is even now.
Could be Ed
so
Miliband.
We're going to have to suffer the next 3 years.
Could be Ed Miliband. Herbie, thank you very much. You just popped up on my screen there. Herbie, thank you for that. Andrew's on the line in Hertfordshire. Hello, Andrew.
Good morning,
Good
Julia.
morning, my love.
Quite a joke to speak to you. Yeah, Andy Burnham just goes to show how the polls are wrong in relation to reform.
Why'd you say
and
that?
I'll tell you why. Because they must be so much more reform-focused, and Reform are going to win. They're running scared of Reform. It's not Andy Burnham. They couldn't afford to put the electorate against Labour because Reform are polling at one level, but the real vote is probably about 30% more. So they were terrified.
I think there would be like the shy Tories, the shy Reform, and on the day, I think there's also people who might back off on the day and vote Tory. So who knows? But it certainly looked like if there was a mayoralty vote in Manchester, that actually that would go to Reform. You, I know, also wanted to talk about those ICE agents. Where do you stand on these 2 shootings now?
Look, Trump is voted into office on people and immigration.
Yep.
He has given them the lawful authority to go and remove the people. It's nothing to do with you or me. And we have the same thing in this country. You want to demonstrate, that's good, but you cannot affect my right to lawful progress, breach of the peace. They're lawfully there doing their job. If you get in their way, if you agitate them, then there's a chance you're going to die. These people have died for no good reason.
Yep.
Don't get involved. It's nothing to do with you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Again, if you want to change the law, go to Congress, campaign in your local office, in your local party, that's fine. But the law is the law, and the law ain't changed, and they weren't protesting when Obama did it. And we all know why. Andrew, thank you very much indeed, Andrew in Hertfordshire. Your thoughts, very welcome as well, 0344 499 1000. Up next, going to take a quick break. They're going to be talking to the Institute of Fiscal Studies former director Paul Johnson about graduates claiming benefits, so many people are being asked to help save pubs by getting rid of dry January. You shouldn't be doing dry January anyway. Ed Miliband as Chancellor. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:35 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Delighted to welcome my next guest to the show, Paul Johnson. He's the former director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies and joins us now. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's great we get you on more now you've left the Institute of Fiscal Studies. Got a bit more time on your hands in Oxford there. Let's talk about graduates, actually. I wonder if this includes graduates from, the various colleges in Oxford. Hundreds of thousands of graduates, 707,000 people apparently with a university degree, are now claiming benefits amid a post-pandemic surge in people who say they are too sick to work. So we've always had this idea, these people who are not in work, young people in particular, it's because they haven't got qualifications, they haven't got the oomph to get up off their backsides. But we're talking about people who've often been pretty well educated here.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to be clear what that research is showing. That's graduates across the age distribution. So there are an awful lot of graduates right across the age distribution. You're still much more likely to be out of work and much more likely to be on disability benefits if you don't have a high level of education. So, I mean, there's some remarkable statistics there, almost the opposite of what you're saying. If you're 30 and don't have any qualifications, you're more likely to be on disability benefits than if you're 60 and you're a graduate. So, I mean, there's a huge problem with people with low levels of qualifications, but the number of graduates on benefits, and particularly health-related benefits, has something like doubled over the last since before the pandemic. So it's an issue that's across the population. But we shouldn't ignore the fact that it's actually those with the lowest levels of education are much more likely to be disabled or have health benefits.
Yeah, well, indeed. And again, as always in these cases, so much of it is mental health rather than physical health. And again, I can remember when I was first a political reporter, we were talking about people who were suffering from bad backs, and people were out of work because they had bad backs. And then for many years it became stress, and now it's anxiety and depression and ADHD and autism and things like that. But basically all of these things, and it moves through the generations, moves through the years, are things that it's pretty impossible for anyone to objectively say you have or you haven't got this, and it's very much a subjective thing, and therefore of course it makes it much easier for people to sign on for these benefits.
Yeah, it's certainly the case. If you look at people on benefits, as you say, the large majority do have those, quotes, musculoskeletal issues, which is essentially backaches or mental health problems. And for older people, as you'd expect, it's more likely to be a physical issue. For younger people, it's more likely to be a mental issue. And that's where, particularly among younger people in their 20s and 30s, it's this big increase in those who are claiming for reasons of mental health, anxiety, depression, what have you, that have grown so much. And you're right, these are much harder to diagnosed, much harder to be certain about than some of the serious physical issues, which of course people have, and people are getting benefits for those reasons. But if you look at the big increase in terms of numbers, particularly, it's, as I say, in young people, it's the mental health issues. For older people.
And again, there's no particular explanation for this, and people say, well, it was lockdown, particularly affected young people at crucial times of their life. But of course, and again, these graduate figures are across the age range. But of course, many other countries, similar, European, Western democracies, had the similar lockdowns, some much harsher, and they have not experienced this. There is a big issue in terms of welfare dependency in this country. A lot of talk even at the papers at the weekend about, things like, pensions. And we're talking about Andy Burnham wanting to challenge the Prime Minister for the leadership of this country. And my guest in the studio, Benedict Spence, making the point that actually, look, whoever is leader of this country, and again, it's pretty much the same whether it's Tory, Reform, Green, Lib Dem, Labour, whoever it is, they've got the same numbers to crunch when they look at their in-tray. They've got the same international implications of oil price hikes or gas hikes or war or whatever it is, but they've also got the same numbers in terms of, how much you're having to spend on welfare, how much you're spending on pensions and everything else, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are some fundamental problems. So the first thing, you're right, it's since the pandemic, it really is only the UK where we've seen this big increase in disability benefit receipts. So that is not something that is true across the world. Some of these other things are true more generally. So the higher numbers of people over pension age, bigger spending on pensions. Actually, if anything, we're in a better position than most, partly because we've got quite a low state pension, and actually our pensioner population is a bit smaller relative to our overall population than in many Western European countries. But if you look over the next several years, everything gets harder, and we will be spending more on pensions. We will be spending more on the health service. We presumably will be spending more on defence. We have got this, as you say, very significant number of people on disability benefits, rising still very fast over this decade. And as you say, whoever is in office, they're going to be facing the same sorts of problems. And honestly, has anyone come up with any very obvious answers to this? Well, no.
No, that seems to be the problem, doesn't it? It doesn't seem to be an obvious answer to the problem in the economy generally as well. Rachel Reeves has been dealt with, told another blow. Firms have warned of a drop in private sector activity amid fragile confidence. The Confederation of British Industry said it was a disappointing outlook for the next 3 months following its regular survey of businesses. And we know in particular hospitality is absolutely suffering. And Britons have even been urged to try and, go to the pub. I know you're in dry January. Go to the pub, spend some money to stop locals from going under. But this is a really, we talk about this a lot on the show. We did during lockdown, we do still now. These are really important, not just community hubs, but they're also huge employers in this country, the hospitality industry.
Well, I'm personally at least doing my best. I'm not doing dry January, I'm afraid, and I'll probably suffer as a result. But look, yes, hospitality is clearly an important industry. It's a very big employer. It's at least parts of it have been struggling for a period of time, and I think that reflects to some extent the fact that people aren't. Well, it reflects to a significant extent the fact that people aren't spending. We're saving more than almost ever before in ways that I don't think anyone really expected. And I think that reflects people's worries about the future. People are concerned about where the economy's going. They might be concerned about their jobs. They're certainly going to be concerned about what's happening to their pay. And so they're actually going out and spending less than they have in the past. So until we get that sort of confidence back in the economy and that confidence to go and spend, in a sense, enjoy ourselves, I think that's going to have an effect on all sorts of
industries. And it's circular, isn't it? Because we don't have the confidence because we can see what's happening. People worried about losing their jobs, not getting pay rise, and then it carries on, doesn't it? I mean, talk about another kind of landlord rather than pub landlords. The landlords, people who rent out homes, are also in the news. Ed Miliband, the Energy Security or Net Zero Secretary, you can't be both. He's launched, we're told, a £10 billion war on property landlords. Could actually end up with us basically seeing fewer properties available to rent, rents therefore going up, not just because there's fewer properties, but also the cost of landlords being recouped and a shortage of homes. And basically, this is all about sort of requiring landlords who rent out to basically upgrade their properties in line with stricter and stricter net zero laws. But we're talking about, 5-10 grand per property. Landlords are going, I haven't got that sort of money. I'll have to just sell my property. I can't do it. What do you make of this? Because this is something that was brought in under the Tories, kicked back, pushed back. A lot of people thought this would be pushed back even more, but no, he's going ahead with it.
Well, I think it's important to put this in a wider context. The last Conservative government actually really significantly increased taxes on landlords. Yep. This government has done the same. It's also increased taxes on landlords, and now you've got this additional cost through, as you say, these energy requirements. That's people might think, well, landlords. I mean, who cares about landlords? They're not exactly the most popular group in the world. But this will have an effect on the rental sector and on tenants. So politically, it might feel easy. To some people at least, to hit landlords, but the reality is that will reduce the supply of rental properties and increase rents, and that's a huge issue. I mean, if you want to rent somewhere in London, you're talking about £1,000 a month or more to rent somewhere. That means that people can't move to the parts of the country where the jobs are, that you can only really live and work there if you happen to come from there or have pretty well-off parents if you're a younger person. I think people just politicians don't get that they do things to one group of people, and it may be them paying the bills, it may be the landlords paying the bills, but the consequence isn't necessarily on them. It's on a much wider part of the economy and of society. So you need to be very careful with that and think about, you might want to do the net zero stuff, but put that on top of increasing stamp duty for landlords, put that on top of increasing income tax for landlords, put that on top of increasing capital gains tax for landlords. You put all of that together and becoming and of course, we've actually had much wider set of regulation around rental contracts, which again is going to be putting landlords off. That's going to shape and change the shape of the housing market in ways that I don't think, honestly, the politicians are intending, but nevertheless, that's going to be the effect.
But we have this with policy after policy, and again, it's all political parties not realising these unintended consequences, most of which, by the way, are entirely predictable and predicted, but they just don't bother doing the actual consultation. Let's talk to someone who knows about this stuff. And again, look, it's like, let's have rent controls. Brilliant. Okay, rent controls, wherever they've been tried, have led to basically fewer
rent controls are a disaster.
Fewer properties coming forward, because again, this idea that we have this idea that landlords are bad people. I know people, not myself, but people who have a property they rent. It's an investment for their pension. They are and they rent it out. They've got tenants. They treat them very well. The tenants like them. But they need to make enough money from the rent to cover the mortgage they've also got. And if they can't, with all that extra costs, they sell. That is no longer a rental property. I must ask you just finally, finally, though, you're talking about this is the net zero policy. Again, it's not just Ed Miliband pushing this is Keir Starmer as well. But there's a lot of talk about leadership challenges against Keir Starmer. If we are told, everyone's denying it, but if we are told that Andy Burnham, if he did get in as an MP and he did stand as a Labour leader, apparently he wants his Chancellor to be Ed Miliband. Given his understanding of economics, he has the same degree as me, rather worryingly, would you trust him to be a good Chancellor?
Well, I'm struggling to find anyone being a good chancellor at the moment. Look, what would you get if you? I mean, you have to think what would a different chancellor bring? Well, if Andy Burnham wants a chancellor who's going to take his attitude and say we shouldn't be in hock to the bond markets, in other words, essentially seeming to believe you can borrow whatever you want, then that will worry me. That will worry me enormously. I mean, why would you choose Chancellor to one who's somewhat more, I assume, left-wing than the one we have at the moment? Either you think you can get away with borrowing more, well, I wouldn't try that if I was you, or you'll find someone who's even more willing to hike taxes. So, I don't think the problem is the individual Chancellor. As we were saying right at the beginning, we've got a whole series of problems facing us at the moment, and if we're not going to get a grip on the health bill, the benefits bill, and all the other things, then we're going to continue to struggle, whoever is Chancellor.
Really good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Paul Johnson, former Director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Benedict Spence, listening to all of that, your thoughts?
I mean, honestly, the thing when it comes to Andy Burnham and the economic ideas, and it is that thing where it's kind of like, well, you don't have to be in hock to the bond markets. It's the thing that just really sets the alarm bells ringing, because of course we all remember the Liz Truss episode.
Yeah.
We all remember the thing that when you just try to think to yourself, well, international markets, they're not real, or they can be manipulated, or actually they'll understand what I'm trying to get through, even though I'm completely different. It's that sort of fantasy economics that we've had before with the Labour Party, and actually it's not electorally viable because the average voter is not that stupid, even if a lot of Labour apparatchiks are. It's really concerning. It's why I say it doesn't solve any of the problems. It might give Labour that shot in the arm, but can you really imagine how we're going to make it worse?
It would be a really fun roller coaster week, but it would just be a week before they ran.
It would be.
They would make Liz Truss look like a long-serving Prime Minister. 11:48 time, we're going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking about the latest protest in Crowborough and East Sussex. Every single Sunday, thousands of people are turning out to protest those asylum seekers arriving at that military barracks on the edge of the town. Well, they've actually been bussed in overnight in cover of darkness, and those protests continue. We'll talk to a local councillor up next. This is Talk.
Every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, have taken that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say. So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, to me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:51 is the time. Let's turn our attention. We're talking about protests with the ICE agents over in Minneapolis. Let's talk about protests at home. Rather more sedate affairs, but absolutely those people are marching to protect their rights and indeed their loved ones, in many cases their daughters. And that, of course, there's protests that are happening now weekly, every Sunday in Crowborough in East Sussex, where for reasons entirely beyond most of reasonable people's understanding, the government has decided they're going to put some 550 illegal migrant men into an army barracks that is not many miles from the centre of town, not many, not surrounded by fencing, but just basically literally 20-minute walk. Local bus stops where kids get the bus to school, right next to families living peacefully in that town. No wonder locals are up in arms, and why they are out protesting every single week, especially when last week the first illegal migrants who arrived were bussed in under cover of darkness. Let's talk to Michael Lunn. He's a Conservative councillor in East Sussex, Wealdon district. Of course, this area is a local Tory-run council. Thank you so much for joining us, Michael.
Yeah, good morning, Julia. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, we've spoken to so many people who've been involved in these protests. And again, I'm sure lots of people on the left say, oh, you're horrible and racist and bigoted and far right and fascist and goodness knows what. These are just ordinary families, ordinary people. A lot of them are women, people worried about themselves, worried about their daughters and the risk to them from illegal migrant young men basically left to their own devices. These protests aren't going anywhere, are they?
No, certainly not. And I was there for yesterday's protest. It was probably one of the largest protests we have seen in Crowborough. Over 5,000 people attended. I've
seen different numbers, whether it's 2,000, 5,000. I mean, it's always difficult to count these things, but it's in the thousands. We know that.
It's the largest one I've ever attended, and I predict it was over 5,000. Yeah. It was nearly half a mile long, so you can do the calculations from that. But it was full of families. It was full of kids, children, mothers, grandparents, elderly. We passed a care home, and literally the residents of that care home waving their Union Jacks, and the protesters waving back at them. It was very much a family-orientated event and very peaceful.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, and again, it's interesting. I think like what happened at the Bell Hotel in Epping, there just seems to be this view for the authorities that you can either fight these things legally, or you just hope these people get bored and they go away and they just won't bother anymore. There's no sign of that happening. If anything, you say the exact opposite. But this was particularly spurred on, of course, this weekend by the bussing in under the cover of darkness of the first illegal migrants who were seeking asylum and going to be put into that camp. Tell us what happened.
I would say, yeah, absolutely. The Home Secretary made the decision to bus in 28 illegal migrants into the camp overnight. The latest information that I have as a local councillor is approximately 5 of those asylum seekers, so-called asylum seekers that have moved into the camp, have actually absconded and actually left the area.
We hope, yeah.
So, well, yes, so they've been seen at Crowborough train station, presumably going to London, because the train goes to London. And obviously, who knows where they are now. So that may be a question you can put to the Home Secretary.
Oh, well, if she'd ever agreed to come on the show, I absolutely would love to. But this is the thing, isn't it? Because when people... This is I never understood. I mean, the Tories were just as bad about this. When everyone said, we don't want these people living in local hotels. OK, well, we'll get rid of them out of hotels. We'll put them into, local houses of multiple occupancy. We went, no, we don't want them hanging, in the streets living among us or at the hotel at the end of the road. We don't want them here at all. Put them in camps or get rid of them. OK, we'll put them in camps. But we didn't mean a camp right next to a small town, literally easy walking distance, where the fences are open. I understand from one of the protesters interviewed yesterday that she was saying that, if someone they're allowed out, they have to sign in and sign out of the camp, but they're allowed to move freely at any time. They sign out, they don't come back. After 5 days, they are judged to no longer need accommodation. That's the end of the matter. Nothing happens.
Yeah, and that's correct. Yeah, that's the information that I've got as well. And it's ludicrous because this is not a disused army camp. This was a site that was used by 5,000 cadets that are hoping to serve for our country, and they are now displaced. And our local MP, Nusrat Ghani, has been working extremely hard to try and find a new location for those cadets to go. And to the best of my knowledge at this moment in time, as I speak to you, there is no place for them to go.
And interestingly, they were also told, you know, you can no longer be on this camp at all, because this will now be unsafe for you. But if it's unsafe for the cadets to be at the camp because of the illegal migrants, why is it safe for those illegal migrants to walk the streets and you know, and to stand at the same bus stop as young girls getting a bus to school?
Yeah, and indeed, my daughter travels on that bus route. She's, you know, a young lady. She likes to travel, see her friends in Crowborough and surrounding areas. And these migrants can jump on that bus and go wherever. Do you know what I mean? We had an incident, I believe, a couple of days ago where one of them was on a scooter, basically driving that scooter through the traffic dangerously and through some school children down to the train station, jumped on the train and disappeared. And he was covered in tattoos all over his face. So presumably a Home Office have this information. But, you know, things are happening in Crowborough. We've got a golf course locally, and there's a gang of 5 of them wandering around the golf course, interfering with golfers. Do you mean?
I mean, that's genuinely, you know, if you're on a golf course, you are, you know, you're often away from other people. That is very dangerous. And again, we're not saying that every single person in that camp is by definition a criminal because they've entered the country illegally. I'm sorry, end of. That was the law. But you know, we're not saying that everybody is a danger, but the rate of criminality among these people, particularly sexual assault and stuff, is way too high. It's unacceptable.
And I think the key thing that the local community are most concerned about is that we do not know who these people are.
Exactly.
These are undocumented males that have come into the country. We're predicting, and you know, we're anticipating this is going to get worse before it gets better, Julia, because effectively you've got different ethnic groups that will be housed in this camp, and there's going to be infighting as well.
Yeah, we've seen that
and this
before.
is a resource for our country, for our cadets, and it's likely going to be smashed up. You know, so we are concerned. And the protests won't go away. People will continue to turn out. And, you know, I'm very proud of our community. They're standing up.
You absolutely should be. And again, peaceful demonstrations by ordinary families. Michael Lunn, local Tory councillor there in East Sussex, thank you for that. Benedict Spence, I mean, the government is just completely convinced, if we just make this all go away so they're not in one big place and people just won't notice and they'll get bored, that's not going to happen. The British people are not going to put up with this.
Well, I mean, they've been made to put up with this because ultimately there's no sign that the Labour Party, that the Labour government is going to change any of this policy. They are going to keep on doing this under cover of darkness, busing people into areas where people don't want them and then go, well, what do you want us to do? You know, this is just what we have to do. Until we actually have a government that's prepared to say, no, this is insane, and whatever, you know, international legal agreement we've signed up to, this isn't working for the people. It is undemocratic that these people are here. Ultimately, that's a key thing. It is undemocratic. It is not what they want. It is what they constantly vote against. When are they going to be listened to? Is it going to be when violence breaks out? Again,
as we were saying.
Why should they have to be subjected?
Again, we're back to the ICE agents in America carrying out the, you know, electorally mandated, legal, you know, the law of the land. End of. Well, we'll talk about a bit of the ICE shooting. We'll talk about policing. May get onto this topic as well with Roy Ram, a former commander of special operations at New Scotland Yard. The Home Secretary has announced his major new reforms of policing. Is it going to make things any better? I somehow doubt it. We'll find out what Roy Ram thinks up next. Also talk to another Labour MP about Labour in civil war over Burnham. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 2 minutes past midday right now. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connection device, great to have your company. Thank you so much for listening. If you have missed anything of the show, we had some fantastic guests on, and we've got Benedict Spence. You know you want to listen back to what he's had to say. You can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we are going to be discussing a bit more about Andy Burnham being blocked by Keir Starmer from standing in an upcoming by-election in Gorton. Also, major new police reforms back here in Britain, and the second fatal shooting of a protester in Minneapolis by ICE agents. Oh, and the latest woke madness. I mean, these stories. Shakespeare was a black Jewish woman, and the Green Party being sued by a former member because she was suspended for mocking another member having fairy pronouns. You know, you can no longer make this stuff up because it is such a parody of itself. We'll talk to Maya Forstadt about all that madness coming up. First up, let me introduce you once again to Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator joining us today.
And black woman.
And black, yes, he is a black woman. He is a black woman. I mean, listen, as I was pointing out to a guest the other day, you know, if a man can identify as a woman, if I identify as being black, well, then you have to accept it and believe it. Full stop.
I know. I'm very happy that after all this time Shakespeare is being recognised for the beautiful North African Maghrebi woman that they were.
So what I love is it's like feminist historian. It's like really bad historian.
It's just honestly at this point it is. I suspect that this story is going to end up being somebody who's like doing satire and has gone really down the looking glass. They've got too far deep into it.
But I think because this is a parody character.
Yeah, because otherwise you can only assume people are literally just making up the most far-fetched stuff to get attention because you can't seriously believe this stuff. It's nuts.
Never.
You know, this historian has got on the front pages. You know, people are talking about this nonsense.
I say I have a guinea pig now dead. Now, many long years dead, who would still be able to write better history than this woman. But anyway, I don't know, I assume she identifies as a woman. I mean, be one of those mad people. But anyway, we will talk about that a bit later. Much more important things to talk about in this hour. First up, we will be talking a little bit more about Andy Burnham being blocked by Keir Starmer. He's all over the news today, justifying, it's all these good reasons why he had to block Andy Burnham from standing in a local by-election in the Manchester area and losing his Manchester mayoralty, which, of course, could well fall to reform. But, of course, we all know the real reason is because he doesn't want a challenge from the King of the North, Andy Burnham. But would things be any better? Do get in touch. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Is he just free? Is he scared? Would things be better under Andy Burnham? Certainly a better communicator, but hey, far to the left. And he wants to put Ed Miliband in as Chancellor, we're told. I mean, this whole show is sponsored by the word what is your reaction? Give us a call 03444. I don't know how you spell it, but that's what it's sponsored by. Give us a call on 03444 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Lots more to talk about, including major police reforms. Biggest police reforms in 200 years, according to the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood. Well, are they? And will they do anything to actually mean that... I know, this is a crazy idea. The police actually turn up when you've been the victim of crime and then try and investigate and then actually arrest someone and then someone actually gets punished if they're found guilty. Because that would be a really good start to police reforms, wouldn't it? Well, let's talk about that with a man who hopefully can answer all those questions. Roy Rabb, former commander of Specialist Operations at New Scotland Yard. A very good afternoon to you, Roy.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. Right, so there's a big fanfare for these police reforms. I mean, again, it's quite interesting. You know, these things have been announced many times before, have they not? But basically, you know, the biggest police reforms, some of the most significant police reforms in this country in 200 years. And we've seen, and this is all about, we heard some of this at the end of last week, 43 different police forces going down to about 12. A national police force that sort of takes over all sort of terrorism and county line stuff and massive fraud, including the National Security Agency and others, and putting it all into one body. Some lower level neighbourhood policing as well. We're told this is going to both save money, improve response times. There's going to be a requirement to turn up within 50 minutes in a city area or 20 minutes in a rural area. And it's also going to mean more police officers as well. Is it likely that any reform is going to do all of those things?
Well, do you know what? I absolutely welcome this, and I'd argued for it for some time, and also that this should be part of a royal commission into the justice system, because, you know, it's all very well having the police force being much more effective. If the sausage machine is chewing, you know, chucking the stuff out, it's got to go somewhere, and it's got to go into the courts. But let's stick with the policing. You know, the last time the police was substantially reviewed was in the 1960s, and before that there was like 1,200 police forces, and some of them you could get them all into one telephone booth. But you know, 43 forces now. You cross boundaries, and the local chief officer wants to do something differently. Communications are different. They're buying uniforms differently. Communication, it's nuts. And you know, we're in a digital age. Communication has changed. It must change.
Presumably also the crimes, a lot of fraud and the county lines, drug gangs and things like that, and, you know, and terrorism. This stuff, I mean, you know, they don't go, oh, well, I'm in Cheshire, I must keep my criminal activity in Cheshire.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, criminals know no boundaries. You know, it'd be great if you're doing surveillance and they get to the county boundary and turn around, but that doesn't really happen. So I think that's really good. I mean, I really look forward to the white paper, but it's got to make sure that there's a level of crime that lots of people don't see, and when you've been talking about that, you know, terrorism when it manifests itself, serious organised crime when it manifests itself. But for most of the public, it's the disorder, it's the shoplifting, it's the street crime, and that has to be visibly policed. So fine. Sort out the logistics, get a national crime squad, absolutely great. I'd love to have been a part of it. But then let's make sure that those tiers underneath it also deliver. And that has to be, we have to see more visibility of police officers. We have to see them turning up to crime scenes. We have to see them dealing with disorder in public places. And you know, and in cities and in rural communities. So that needs to be a product of this reorganisation.
But isn't it extraordinary that we even have to have a conversation? We need to have police turning up to crime scenes. Like, I mean, you know, no beep Sherlock is something a lot of people would be saying at this point. Is it based on? But there's also this idea, I mean, I suppose there is that worry that if, you know, and again, we have this with the NHS, you reform everything, you take out this layer of bureaucracy, you do that, but nothing actually changes. All the focus goes into reform, people getting payoffs, you know, and then being hired back on greater salaries, and nothing actually changes on the ground. What we really need is just more police officers, greater communication. I mean, again, I'm serious. Every police officer needs to be taught touch typing, for the love of God, and no more writing things down on little pads and getting everything into the system straight away. We need to get rid of a load of the box ticking and all of that. They need to be focused on the crimes people care about. But also, crucially, there's this idea that, well, there's serious crime and then there's these minor crimes. Having your bag stolen or your phone stolen or being a small shopkeeper and having shoplifters every day, that is not minor crime. That is a serious crime for those people. But also, those crimes fund the serious crime.
It is. The impact on individuals is unquestionably important, and that's when, you know, when you're meeting friends and they're telling you what's happened to them, that's what's on their mind, and I completely get that. I've seen it a thousand
this is gangs.
times.
You know, the shoplifting around my way, my local high street, I've spoken to all the shopkeepers about it. They've now organising themselves, you know, because it's been done by organised gangs, and they use that money for other things, you know. I mean,
they do.
The people smugglers, the drug dealers, everything. This stuff is all being, you know, funded by a lot of this minor crime as well. And if the police spent their time catching this low-level criminals, they may find they might actually tackle some high-level criminality too.
I don't disagree with anything you said, but what I would say also is that, I mean, some shoplifting is not of the organised kind. There is loads of the organised crime without any doubt. But even if it's an individual getting away with it, it sends a message to communities that actually it's okay to steal from the local shop when it really isn't. So it needs to be tackled locally, but where there are links identified to serious and organised crime, then it needs to be pushed up, and you need them for that supranational organisation to be able to go across the boundaries and say, hang on, the proceeds from 100, 200 incidents of shoplifting are fueling drugs trafficking, arms movement, people trafficking. So you need that integrated policing model.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do find an awful lot of crime is happening in plain sight. Again, police aren't turning up. Even the serious stuff. I mean, one of my local, between two high streets, one of them, it's closed down now and changed into something else. But it was a nut shop. It just sold nuts. It sold nuts in an area where I'm not sure a nut shop would survive. It wasn't, Islington High Street or Hampstead High Street or something. And this nut shop had the most extraordinary security. I mean, it literally had security guards outside. The back door from the store, out the back of the shop, and indeed the shop, the shop back at the door of the front, the front bit of the store, completely reinforced steel doors. I don't think they were selling nuts. A friend of mine went into the shop and asked to buy some nuts, and they looked utterly perplexed and said, "What do you normally pay?" Because they didn't sell nuts. How is it that the locals are going, "I don't think that's a nut shop. I don't think that's what they're doing." Police, no, doing absolutely nothing about it. I mean, it's laughable.
Well, yeah, I agree. But I mean, I really look forward to this white paper this afternoon, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again.
You're so much more positive than me. Look, what do you reckon of this new British FBI? I mean, that's, shorthand for this national police service, including the National Crime Agency, counter-terrorism policing, regional organised crime units, police helicopters, national road policing, one organisation. I mean, that sounds like that makes sense. And the boss of that will be senior to the Metropolitan Police Chief, who's currently the most senior police officer. Is that going to make a difference, having that all under one umbrella?
Yeah, it's going to make a huge difference, I think. Once you start to look at terrorism offences, it kind of comes back to what we were speaking about earlier about people crossing borders, whether they're borders within the UK or national borders. If you're a police chief, let's say in France or in Italy, and you've got some information about drugs movement, people movement, terrorism, you want a comparable organisation. And I think it allows the UK to speak to these other countries, including the US and the FBI, on a much easier basis. Okay. And I don't think it matters whether that individual is more senior than the Met Commissioner. I mean, whoever's running London's still got a pretty big job. But I think it's a really good idea.
Okay, just finally on UK policing, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, has also said she's going to scrap non-crime hate incidents, crucially, in their current form. She's been saying, they're distracting police from fighting, crime that people care about. She says officers should be focused on catching criminals, cutting crime, making sure that people in our neighbourhoods feel safe. I don't want them to be policing perfectly legal tweets. I want to make sure they're focused on the day job. We've had two Home Secretaries under the Tories, Priti Patel and Suella Braverman, who both tried to scrap non-crime hate incidents. They were never in law. They were created by the College of Policing, which has been more captured than the NHS. I mean, it basically is Stonewall, as far as I can tell. Saying you don't want police to go after people for perfectly legal tweets, that's all very well, but the police often think these tweets aren't legal, and they are completely caught up in that woke culture where anyone who feels offended, that must be recorded in some way. Two former Tory Home Secretaries failed to do this. Do you think a Labour Home Secretary will?
You're right. I'm slightly more positive than you.
You're much more. I mean, you are. I mean, you're blue skies today, Roy.
I travel in hope. Look, this whole issue of tweets and hate policing has been such a massive distraction as to try to identify what the government says is illegal and what they want police to do about it. If you go right back to people would phone the Nick and say, look, my neighbours said something awful to me, and you'd go around, knock on the door and say, look, please behave yourselves. And you might actually make a note of that in a collator's index.
Just in case something happens.
Just in case. But it's not a conviction. It's not something that's going to impair somebody getting a job or their livelihood. And that's the kind of common sense area where we need to be.
Yeah, common sense would be nice. That'd be a start. Can I ask you just finally, looking at things overseas, I'm sure you've seen all these reports about these ICE agents in Minneapolis. The second person, a protester, to be killed by ICE agents in that city. It's not happening elsewhere. These protests have turned, pretty aggressive, it seems at times. This man did have a gun, although he wasn't arming it. He one hand was quite clearly empty, the other hand he was holding a mobile phone. Things turned pretty nasty. 20 different video versions of this. Everyone's giving their political tuppence worth on this. What do you make of someone who's been in the thick of it, as former commander of specialist operations in New Scotland Yard, of law enforcement agents getting up in a situation where they kill a protester?
Do you know what? It is really, really troubling. If you look, for example, at the Met last year, the Met, as you will know, has spoken about, policed thousands of demonstrations. Nobody, absolutely nobody, got shot by the Met in any set of circumstances last year. And across the UK, I think there were 4 incidents and 2 were sadly suicide by cop. So we're talking about a completely different environment where guns, everybody has guns. This guy had a legal weapon, apparently was allowed to carry it. Why you would carry a legal weapon to a public order event like that defeats me. But I think the problem is that ICE are appearing as a paramilitary organisation, and there is not a history of policing public order incidents in the US which is comparable to what we see in the UK. I think they need to step back. I think they need some training in how to deal with crowds, how to speak to people, and how to deal with these incidents with non-lethal weapons. I think it's heading for a tragedy.
Thank you so much, Roy Ram, a former commander of specialist operations at New Scotland Yard. Very much appreciate you joining us. Thank you for that. Just some breaking news for you. Former Home Secretary, Conservative MP Suella Braverman has joined Reform UK. She has defected to Reform. We were expecting, weren't we, this week there'll be an announcement about a high-profile Labour figure. Very much not a high-profile Labour figure, but absolutely a very high-profile Conservative. She follows on from Robert Jenrick, of course Nadhim Zahawi, and Andrew Rossendale as well. Again, 3 of those being Conservative MPs who have actually defected, but that's the 4th high-profile Tory, 3rd high-profile. Along with Jenrick. Robert Jenrick was in the shadow cabinet, but certainly a former Home Secretary. I think many people, Benedict Spence still with me, had expected that Suella Braverman was on the list of likely defectors. Her husband had defected from the Tories to Reform, and had been all over social media talking about it as well.
I was going to say, she's defected months after the rest of the world assumed she already had. So,
yes.
Better late than never. Maybe she didn't get the memo, but this is one of those that I think people had assumed it was going to happen at some point anyway, especially after Robert Jenrick jumped. There was no real reason for Suella Braverman to remain in the Conservative Party. There was no career progression. It was very clear that a lot of her colleagues don't like her very much. Her politics are much more closely aligned with that of Reform. Yeah. I think this was just an inevitable thing, maybe just a placeholder until this fabled Labour defector actually emerges. Who that might be,
well, Kate Hoey denies it's her.
Yeah, we don't know who it is. They don't know who it is.
Hey, it might be my next guest who's a Labour MP. You never know. We'll put it to him. But but this is a role, and again, there's this very, very clear, absolutely open statement from Nigel Farage after the defection of Robert Jenrick, after he was sacked and ousted from the Tory party, because he was going to defect within a few days. He said, look, May the 7th, the day of the local Welsh and Scottish elections, that is your last day for defecting. We're not going to, the door is not going to be open forever. Yeah. There'll be a lot of focused minds as a result of that. Now, there will be an element, I would have thought, that the likes of Kemi Badenoch, the Tory party leader, who we had on the show last week, will be saying, good riddance, glad we've got rid of you, not an issue. Again, you're Nigel Farage's problem now. But, she is a former Home Secretary, and a Home Secretary who spoke out on a lot of these issues, who tried to get a lot of things done that she could not get done because of the Tory party basically talking the talk and not walking the walk.
These ones that have been defecting the last couple of weeks have not been like the sort of the drip feed of ousted MPs who most people sort of looked at and went, well, a big whoop, that person's defecting. They're doing that because actually they've got nothing left, politically speaking, going on for them. These people are people who still carry quite a bit of heft, even within a lot of Conservative members. There will still be Conservative Party members who look at these people going and go, well, there goes the last shreds of my chance, sort of hang about. But I tell you what, I'm looking forward to May 7th. It's going to be like transfer deadline day.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to have Nigel Farage hanging out of his car window going,
from talkSPORT.
you have to ask the chairman who's coming left. Who knows, maybe somebody will go back to the Tories.
The more people on the right of the Conservative Party who move to reform, the more left. And we saw, did we not, with Andy Streeter and
the
I
name's
know,
gone.
Ruth
the
Davidson,
former Scottish Labour leader.
Ruth
Not Labour leader, Tory.
Yeah, I mean, and both of them out and about. I would love to have them on the show talking about how this centrist, again, what they think is centrist is basically Lib Dem Blair. That's what they don't get.
Yeah, it's we're going to see. Is that going to be the direction of the Tory party? Because it might be. It might give them a lifeline. It might mean that they have to kill the Lib Dems for them to survive rather than reform. But it leaves the way open for reform.
It really does. Fascinating. I'd love to hear your reaction to that. Suella Braverman, the former Home Secretary, has joined Reform UK. She's just been speaking at an event Reform were holding about veterans, in front of veterans, many veterans in the audience, about how they would not allow that change in the law, which Labour are looking at, to basically give free for all for private prosecutions of soldiers who were fighting in the Troubles and trying to protect peace in the Troubles. Your thoughts on that? Give us a call 0344 499 1000. We'll get to your calls in about 10 minutes' time or so. First up, then we're going to take a break. Then we're going to be talking to another Labour MP, Graham Stringer. Find out, is he defecting? I don't know. Whether he thinks that the Prime Minister did the right thing or the wrong thing for his leadership in blocking Andy Burnham from running for that by-election. Is he weaker or stronger? We'll find out what Graham Stringer thinks up next. This is Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Beeves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK on DAB+.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:24 is the time. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Just to bring you that breaking news, former Home Secretary Suella Braverman has joined Reform UK. She has announced her defection at an event they've been holding in London for veterans. But she says, I feel like I've come home. Bearing in mind, of course, she lost her job twice as Home Secretary. Came back, she was under Liz Truss, then came back under Rishi Sunak, and she did actually resign in November 2023. This over basically an article she wrote in the Times, which had not been basically agreed by Number 10, accusing the police of bias in protest. She'll go down very well with the Reform crowd, won't she? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. First up, though, let's talk more about what on earth's going on in the Labour Party. Is it civil war? Well, let's talk to Graham Stringer. He's Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton South and joins us now. Good afternoon to you, Graham.
Good afternoon.
Lovely to talk to you. I must ask you first, because we were told there was going to be a Labour defector to Reform. Is it going to be you?
It's absolutely not. But in a sense, I don't see the point of the question, because anybody who's going to defect will have a big launch with fanfare and won't answer to a journalist.
Oh, so you could be lying.
Absolutely not. I could be, but I'm not. I've been in the Labour Party all my adult life, and I have no intention of leaving.
Just good to know, good to know. What did you make of the shenanigans over the weekend with Andy Burnham saying he would like to stand as the candidate in the Gorton by-election, but of course, under the Labour Party rules, he couldn't stay as mayor, but he also have to ask permission from the Labour Party. Meeting of the NEC, of course, Keir Starmer, very busy with other things, but had time to be at this meeting, took about an hour. It was among those who voted against him being allowed to give up his Manchester mayoralty to stand in that by-election. It's clearly quite a lot of bad feeling seeing from what Andy Burnham has complained about since it wasn't even told before the press were told and the like. The Prime Minister has justified this on the basis that the massive cost of a mayoral by-election as well, and Labour focusing their resources on fighting Scotland, Wales, and the local elections rather than mayoralty as well. But was it the right decision for the party, for the country? Oh, can you hear? Oh, we've lost you. I did notice we had a delay on that line when we first started speaking, but it appears the delay is now such that we can't actually hear Graham Sting at all. Hopefully we will get him back. I think they're trying to get him back on the
Unless
Zoom.
he is now in fact defecting, having really pulled the wool over your eyes.
Yes, he has just defected. That's not just defected. Behave. Right, well, let's go back. While we waited to get him on the line, we talk about, Keir Starmer defending this. Basically, it's like it's the right thing for the Labour Party. You could argue there's the Labour Party, there's the government, there's Keir Starmer, and there's the country. Those four things are all different, aren't they?
They're all different. I think it's good short term for Keir Starmer. I don't think it's good for
because he's dealt with just the immediate threat.
Yeah, for the short term, it's fine. For the government, the government is beholden to the Labour Party, and the Labour Party is not going to change regardless of who the leader is. That they can select a leader who is more inclined to agree with them on certain views, but then that's bad for the country. I think all that this does is it just keeps everything in a holding pattern for Keir Starmer. Everybody knows he's pretty much toast. That's all. There simply isn't somebody yet with enough support or bold enough or the avenue to challenge him. We're simply waiting for that person to find a chink in the armour to make their way through. Clearly that's not Andy Burnham this time. We wait to see if it's going to be somebody from inside the cabinet or somebody on the backbenches.
Yeah, that's the thing. Just bad news. We just spoke to a Labour MP a little bit earlier on the show, but Graham Street, the line is just, apparently it's just too bad quality. I know they're still trying to work on it. Strong possibility we won't be able to speak to Graham Stringer because the quality of the line has just gone down so much. I'm absolutely gutted about that because I so appreciate him taking the time to talk to us. But if we can get him back, we will do our best. But this news, the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has joined Reform UK, saying, I feel like I've come home. It's very interesting. She's a great performer. I think she's a great communicator. She's always been pretty out there in the Tory party, considered to be sort of, I think, awkward. But again, doing stuff that, let's face it, I think the vast majority of Tory voters would agree with virtually every word Suella Braverman says. Yeah. She's a very good, she's a very good communicator. She's, she looks good, she sounds good. And then she's one of those people that's sort of regarded by the mainstream media as some swivel-eyed lunatic because she thinks that criminals should go to prison and that we shouldn't have illegal migrants in the country. These are not controversial views to most people.
There are lots of criticisms one could make of Suella Braverman. What I would say in her defence is that she forced many members of the Conservative Party, I think, to confront the fact that her views are not fringe views, that they are mainstream. And it challenged the party to make a decision on what direction it was going to go. Was it going to be democratic and listen to people, or was it going to stick its head in the sand? I think it's quite clear what direction it is now going. That might not be entirely down to the party. It's also, of course, the fact that Reform coming up on the outside suddenly shot up in popularity out of nowhere, especially when Farage came back into the fold. So it's not entirely to do with the party. Maybe it would have changed if there hadn't been Reform, but I think the die is fairly clearly cast now. Ultimately, that is where the ascendancy, the momentum is, and she just fits so much better there than she does in Kemi Badenoch's version of the Conservative Party.
And again, the Tory party decided which way they were going to go with Rishi Sunak. How's that working for you? is all I can say. Oh, is it 113 MPs they've got now? I mean, there you are. Well, it's going to be fascinating. We're going to talk to Reform's Alex Wilson in a couple of moments to find out his reaction to this news. I'm pretty sure I can predict what it is. I'm really sorry we can't get Graham Stringer back up. We always like to hear all different views on the show, but he's not the Labour defector. That's what he was very, very clear about that. Your views coming up. Love to hear your reaction to Suella Braverman's defection. Love to hear what you have to say about Andy Burnham being blocked by Keir Starmer. And he was personally there. I think he thinks he was Mr. Big I Am doing that personal vote. I think it looks even worse, blocked from returning to Parliament. But I mean, you know, he's still the king up north, guys. Maybe someone else, maybe the king down south. Wes Streeting, I don't know. Ed Miliband. That's again that word again. Could actually be running. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and of course your thoughts on those ICE agent shootings in Minneapolis as well. Plenty to talk about. Get on the phone line, say 344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. Well, it's another day. It's another defection from the Tories to Reform. This time it is Suella Braverman, the former Conservative Home Secretary. She's on stage with Nigel Farage right now at a London press conference. So they were dealing with lots and lots of veterans in the audience, talking about how Reform would certainly change the law, which has just been adopted by Labour Party to basically allow these private prosecutions of veterans. It seems like she's gone down very well indeed, a former Home Secretary under both Liz Truss, briefly. Everyone was briefly under Liz Truss, but also under Rishi Sunak. Of course, she had to resign. Basically, she pretty much got sacked, was forced out twice, but second time was certainly over accusing the Metropolitan Police of bias in terms of their protesting, two-tier protesting. Yeah, it was happening long before Keir Starmer, I think she'll be a very popular figure on Reform's benches, but as Benedict Spence, my guest in the studio today, has pointed out, actually, she's one of those people that you kind of thought she'd already gone over to Reform. Certainly her husband, who was on social media, has already gone over to Reform. I thought it was a matter of time. Not that she's going to do what her husband says, but realistically, her views seem to tally much better with Reform than the Tories, even under new leadership of Kemi Badenoch. We're going to take your calls on all the big topics of the day. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. You can call in about Suella Braverman if you're calling quick. We'll take your calls in just a moment. First up, though, let's talk to Reform UK London Assembly member, friend of the show, Alex Wilson. His reaction. Hello, Alex.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Afternoon, thank you very much. Well, we've moved on from talking about, Andy Burnham, the great white hope for the Labour Party up north, but now we're on Suella Braverman as the latest defector to the Reform Party. I mean, again, a lot of people thought she'd already gone over to Reform, hadn't they?
Well, no, she was still very much a member of the Conservative Party and a member of Kemi Badenoch's parliamentary party, but I'm delighted she's come across now. As I said, a couple of weeks or so ago, there are a very small number of Conservatives that I'd be happy to welcome. She's absolutely one of them. Robert Jenrick was another, and Andrew Rosendale, who represents a constituency very near where I live, is another one. We've picked off the best Conservatives. The rest of them not interested, to be honest. But what we're doing here, we're trying to replace them as a party, the main party on the right of centre of British politics, and bringing some talent, some experience in is great. But ultimately, we're about ploughing our own furrow and taking that battle to the Conservatives, to Labour.
I just want to clarify. You're saying you don't know any of the rest of them.
Well,
no, but I mean, 7th of May is the deadline that Nigel Farage has given. So you're saying the next one who defects, I mean, there's going to be more. There's going to be more. They're going to be leaving what they may regard as a sinking ship, depending on what the polls are. And they're told, the door is closing on the 7th of May. You're not going to be welcoming those.
Well, I didn't quite mean that. I mean,
we set the
deadline. We set the deadline of the 7th of May, and we've done that for a reason, because people have got to make up their minds. If they want to get on board, that's great. Otherwise, get out of the way. We are the main party on the right of British politics now. The polls show it. Council by-elections show it. Week on week, we've gained over 100 by-election seats since the general election. The Conservatives have lost over 20 just since last year's local elections. So, the momentum is very clear in one direction. And if you want to stop Labour, if you want to get Keir Starmer out, there's only one way to do that. That's to vote reform. So, if people want to come and join us from the Tories, let's look at them individually, assess them. But I think we've taken the best ones now. That's what I meant to say.
Would you regard, in terms of the Labour leadership, would you regard Andy Burnham as a bigger threat to reform than Keir Starmer? Would you rather be fighting Starmer or him?
Well, I think the biggest threat that Andy Burnham poses is to Keir Starmer, and that's why Keir Starmer has blocked him from standing in that by-election and prevented him from rejoining the Parliamentary Labour Party. Starmer is scared of facing competition, whether that's within his own party or whether that's with the local
Hold on a minute. You could say exactly the same thing about Nigel Farage. The supporters of someone like, say, Rupert Lowe or others would say, this is he doesn't allow anyone who can challenge him. I'm a big fan of Nigel Farage. I consider him a friend, but it's Nigel say or the highway.
Well, we get on board or get out of the way is the way that I would put it, and that's perfect.
So it's okay if Keir Starmer does the same then, yeah?
But we've seen this last week, people, high-profile Conservatives joining us because they want to get on board, because they want to, they see that Reform UK is the party that will save the country. Going into those elections, we're the only option for getting rid of Starmer, getting rid of Labour, and taking back control of our country. And they want to join us. That's great, but that deadline is there for a reason. Ultimately, we need to. We're building our team, we're broadening our team. But ultimately, we want to be promoting our own homegrown talent as well. And that's the balance that we've seen in Reform. And it's great being a part of that journey over the last few years since the party started. We've grown massively. We're now challenging, and what a time to be alive.
Well, we shall see. Alex Wilson, Reform UK London Assembly member, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to your calls, your reactions to all the news stories we're talking about today. Dan is in Liverpool. Dan, you want to talk about the Labour Party shenanigans and the Prime Minister blocking Andy Burnham, or among those on the NEC, blocking Andy Burnham's chance of standing in that by-election, keeping him as Mayor of Manchester. Apparently he's doing a very good job there, but is this all really about basically the Prime Minister shoring up his own position?
I think Keir Starmer's more scared than a kitten, but I will quickly talk about reform and Suella Braverman, if you don't mind.
Yes, please do.
So, the current feeling for myself and some others that I know is reform has been almost a bit like a circus act. Different tent, different circus master, but the same clowns. But Suella does seem to be that act that could actually light a new star under everyone's fire. So...
You think she's got the credibility?
Yeah, I think she's got great credibility, and she's actually someone who would actually tempt me more towards voting reform.
Okay, and do you mind me asking, and feel free not to answer because you've got a right to your private, political views, but would you normally be a Tory voter or a Labour voter? Or?
I'm not really a party voter. Yep. I'm more of, if I see something right, I'll vote for it.
Yeah, that's where I am. I've got no political party. But who are you most tempted to? You say you'd be tempted to reform. Who right now would be the alternative, if you're willing to answer that?
Truthfully, I think if Keir Starmer's going to be replaced, it would have to be Angela Rayner.
And you'd vote Labour if it was Angela Rayner?
I know quite a lot of people in my district who would vote for Angela Rayner. And don't get me wrong, I know what she's literally done with her bills and stuff, but I do believe she's a working class woman and she's a voice more for the people than Keir Starmer.
Oh, I mean, 100% that. Her story of her life is unbelievably impressive. However, does that mean she's equipped to be Prime Minister?
Well, it would be the very first Labour woman in power. And
who cares?
I would say, I know, it doesn't really matter, but I will say this. We've looked at great people in history. Martin Luther King had a dream. Winston Churchill had a dream of success for England. Keir Starmer is on record saying he does not dream. So how can we have a successful dream?
Oh, that's genius. Dan, what a great call. That's Benedict's absolutely lost it.
Did not see that coming.
No, I was trying to, where is this going? Absolutely hilarious. But, yeah, I mean, he hasn't got the imagination to dream. He really doesn't.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. We have nightmares, but he doesn't dream. Dan, thank you. Fantastic call. Strong calls today. Let's get to Robert, who is in Hertfordshire. Robert, you're going to have to top that. What do you want to talk about?
Oh, I can't top that. That was quality. What I'd like it's concerning the kerfuffle that's going on of the migrants being housed in the military camp.
Yeah, in Crowborough, yeah.
I don't know how your maths was at school. If you was probably like me and smoking round the back of the bike. But just work this out, and it's pretty scary. How many do you... Let's just take it that there's 100 and be housed in each camp. How many migrants are over here at the moment in limbo?
Isn't it about 110,000, something like that?
OK, now divide that by 100 a camp. How many camps you left with?
Yeah, I think it's about 500 a camp. But yeah, exactly. We need to be building some more camps. Put it that way.
Well, no, it's not gonna work, is it? Because all you're gonna get is the same kerfuffle that's happening with one camp.
Yeah.
Multiplied by about 50 or 60, maybe more.
Yeah.
This is scary. You can't have this. The only way I have it is mass internment. That's the only way I have it.
And that's the only thing that would deter people, because if you're put in, you're either shipped straight back or you're interned, and that's the deal until you choose to leave yourself, or we can deport you. And if you can't be deported, you're going to stay in the camp. End of. Sod the human rights thing. That will. You can leave at any time, but it's on a plane or a boat somewhere else. Not a problem. That's the only thing that would work. I couldn't agree with you more there. Robert, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's read you some of the words that Suella Braverman has said. Defecting from the Conservatives to Reform UK. She said, I feel like I've come home. Today I'm announcing I'm resigning the Conservative whip. She says, loyalty demands honesty, and honesty compels me to say this. Today Britain is indeed broken. This is very much echoing the generic line. She says Britain is suffering. She is not well. Immigration is out of control. Our public services are on their knees. People don't feel safe. Our youngsters are leaving the country for better futures elsewhere. We can't even defend ourselves, and our nation stands weak and humiliated on the world stage. Suella Braverman continues, so we stand at a crossroads. We can either continue down this route of managed decline to weakness and surrender, or we can fix our country, reclaim our power, rediscover our strength. I believe that a better Britain is possible. Some pretty strong words there, Benedict Spence. I wonder what would make Britain much better is if we perhaps stopped denigrating all of our historical figures and our great sort of cultural contribution to the world, which leads me to something I want to talk about before we go to a break.
Nice
and this is, we mentioned this a bit earlier, William Shakespeare, according to a new book by someone who claims to be an historian. I mean, if we're using that term very loosely, she claims that William Shakespeare was not just a woman, not just a black woman, but a black Jewish woman. And according to Emilia Bassano in The Real Shakespeare, she says that basically it was just impossible for people to cope with the idea that it could be she said, historians have not managed to explain how the Stratford man, a semi-literate moneylender, this is the real William Shakespeare, managed to gain such a level of erudition. And she said they simply could not cope with the idea that there should be a woman, and a black woman at that, who had this pivotal role and civilising impact in history. And she said if Shakespeare was a female of colour, this would draw attention to issues of peace and justice in society. And she said, what if women had a pivotal role in a civilising impact in society, but they'd been silenced, belittled and erased by the dominant narrative? So there you are. William Shakespeare, not a white man from Stratford, but apparently a black Jewish woman, and apparently a Moor from North Africa.
Phenomenal. I mean, good for them.
I want whatever she's smoking.
I was going to say, do you know what my first job was? I used to work in a print works. I worked 12-hour night shifts, and I remember my first day when I was being given, shown around. One of the people who was showing me around said, "Listen, this job is about one thing. We print books by people who can't write for people who can't read. That's all you need to understand." And I suspect this book falls very firmly into that category, because all of that is absolute gobbledygook, and anybody who does read it is not somebody who is able to comprehend a lot.
No, this will be on the reading list of every major university.
This is nuts.
Very soon.
Yeah, this is whatever university it is.
There was no mystery about who it was. There've been claims about that someone else did someone else write some
that
of the,
it might be Christopher Marlowe or something, an actual playwright who was alive at the same time, rather than let's just pick out all the different diversity boxes and put them together.
I'm surprised it wasn't a lesbian black. Oh, sorry, non-binary black Jewish woman. I mean, this is utterly mad. And these people, okay, we shouldn't even encourage these people by talking about it, but this woman is an LSE graduate and apparently a feminist historian. This woman apparently has credentials. This is how bad our universities are. Now, I'm happy people put up theories and we can debate them, but I doubt very much if you showed her all the evidence of why she's talking absolute nonsense, that she would accept that.
Yeah, once upon a time when you had sort of a very small number of sort of highly intelligent people putting up sort of slightly sort of insane ideas to basically to debate them and to sort of, as a philosophical experiment. And this sort of thing was halfway possible. But I'm afraid to say nowadays our universities are just chock full of people who should not be at university. And this is the thing. I'm not talking the students, I'm talking the academics. I'm talking a lot of people in senior positions should be nowhere near higher education. And yet we're supposed to defer to them because they've got professor or doctor or whatever it is in their name, and we still take this seriously. It's not. I mean, university sector's a bit of a racket right now.
Absolute bonkers. Absolute bonkers. But there we are. We're going to talk about more bonkers stories up next with the brilliant Maya Forstater of Sex Matters. The latest woke trans insanity. Because there's always something else to say, and it's all just as mad as it was last time. We're also going to be talking about someone who's been ousted from the Green Party, I kid you not, for not using the correct pronouns for someone who identifies as a fairy. Yes, really. I'm not even making that up. That's a real thing, apparently. We're going to talk about that up next. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Sinks, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:49 is the time. We're fresh from finding out that apparently William Shakespeare was a black woman. There we are. We're going to be talking about more woke stories in a moment. Just to get you up to date, if you're just tuning in, Suella Braverman, the former Conservative Home Secretary, she has announced that she has defected to Reform. They now have 8 MPs. They only had 4, I think, at the beginning of the year. They've now got 8 MPs, or just at the end of last year, 8 MPs. She's the latest high-profile defection. The other high-profile high-profile defector, Robert Jenrick. He was Shadow Justice Secretary until a week or so ago. He's posted on X just a moment ago. Welcome, Suella Braverman. Great to be on the same team again. Let's take our country back. More on that, no doubt, in the next show. Peter Caldwell is in for Ian Collins from 1 o'clock. Right now, let's talk about the latest woke madness, because we could do basically 3 hours on this every single day, but I always like to talk about the latest madness because we mustn't let it pass. Maya Forstadt is Chief Executive of Sex Matters and joins us, as she regularly does, to talk about the latest insanity going on in the world. Good afternoon to you.
Hello, Julia.
I mean, just don't know where we start. NHS midwives have been recording the gender identity of newborns as opposed to their actual sex, including even their sexual orientation. I'm not sure you know the sexual orientation or the gender identity of your child when they're born. What you know is whether they've got a penis or not, and you can go, that's a boy, that's a girl. Used to be really simple, didn't it?
Yes. I mean, this is a computer system that the NHS has brought in from the US. It's called EPIC, and it was brought in under the Biden administration, and it does ask your sex assigned at birth and then in inventory of organs. And it treats people like they're made out of Lego, basically. Do they have a penis? Do they have testicles? Do they have a vulva? What combination of those things do they have? It's complete nonsense. And we first raised this in 2023, and the NHS said that those things were voluntary and only to be used for people who were having gender reassignment surgery. But here again, we're hearing that NHS nurses, midwives are being trained to use it for logging.
And there's not just one. I mean, this one of the biggest hospitals. I mean, it's just around the corner from here. Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital are using it, but at least 10 NHS hospitals use this, and King's College and the hospital as well. Again, these are major teaching hospitals, but at least 10 NHS hospitals around the country are using this. And midwives are going, well, where's the form for male and female? And this is just basically woke madness in the Biden administration, just being brought over here. And is the excuse that, well, we've got this software and we can't adjust it, but can it be changed, or can't they just say, sorry, ignore all of that stuff, because obviously this is a medical form and it's about facts, not nonsense.
Exactly. That's what they should do. They can always, the NHS is a big customer. They can always change fields. You know, they don't have to accept what any supplier gives them. But this seems to be going further than that. It's being brought back into the training, and midwives are being told to think about babies as having a sex assigned at birth rather than just having a sex.
Well, we've had a minister, a Labour MP. I mean, you know, talking about that. You know, that babies aren't born boys or girls; they're assigned sex. People who are elected members of Parliament have said this nonsense. For goodness' sake,
it's madness. As you said,
yeah.
In the medical schools, it's in the Department for Health. It really needs a root and branch removal.
But I mean, you guys, you've done amazing things, you know, on you know, trying to tackle all this madness and legal cases and that. But it's also up to all of us, and it's up to staff. And we know, you know, nurses not wanting to have a man undressed watching them, pretending he's a woman, watching them getting changed. You know, they're basically losing their jobs, having to fight long court cases that take years. And we've had some, you know, the Darlington nurses and others, you know, these amazing victories. Sandy Peggy, that sort of partial victory. But you know, it's also up to us as patients saying, no, I will not have that. I mean, I remember going to the optician a year or two ago and just saying, no, this form, why have you got my gender identity? Or you know, non-binary. That's not a thing. This should not be on this form. I went to the gynaecologist and there was some nonsense on that. I went, well, of course I'm female. Otherwise, I wouldn't be at a gynaecologist. I can't be anything but. I shouldn't be here otherwise. And exactly. and they all go, oh, I know. And it's like, well, speak up then. Speak up. And you know, we've got to all speak up. But this is it. The NHS is so totally captured. And as we've seen with these nurses just wanting the most basic levels of dignity, like not to have someone, a man, watch them get out, you know, down to their bra and knickers in a changing room. They're scared to speak up.
And when you've just given birth, you should not have to be arguing with the bureaucracy about not recording nonsense about your child.
Yeah, and again, it's like, you know, referring to, you know, someone who identifies as trans when they commit a crime, or this amazing spike we've seen in female violent crime and sexual assaults because they're committed by men. So whether it's a census, a criminal document, you know, involving the criminal justice system, or NHS or a voting document. It needs to record facts, verifiable, objective truth, not what someone feels on a Wednesday afternoon.
Exactly. And it starts at birth and it goes all the way through your life. You cannot change sex, and where people need that information, whether your doctor needs that information, whether the justice system needs that information, it has to be accurate. It should be accurate.
This was something that wasn't even up for debate until 10 years ago. It's bizarre. One thing that wasn't up for debate for 10 years ago also was the idea that we had to use someone's preferred pronouns, because pronouns have a meaning, a meaning in biology, and it's very, very clear referring to a man or a woman or plural. And they also, they're grammatically correct or not. We constantly have this phrase of misgendering people, where, you're not misgendering if you call a man he or him or his, when he is a man, whether he calls himself a woman or not, you're not misgendering, you're being correct. But we've got a whole load of other pronouns that have crept in, and there's been an extraordinary row between the Green Party and Emma Bateman. So Bateman, she was the co-chairman of the Green Party Women's Group. She's now suing the Green Party after they suspended her because they accused her of mocking someone and refusing to use someone's, I kid you not, fairy pronouns. This is someone who identified as a part of the fairy people, didn't know that was a thing. Presumably they were at the bottom of the garden when they did this, and wanted to be referred to using, I don't even know how to pronounce these, fair pronouns, because they believe they're sort of basically mythical beings. And basically Emma Bateman refused, and now she's suing them for suspending her. Again, is this a Monty Python sketch?
Well, Emma was making a joke. I mean, that's the funny thing. She wasn't even misgendering somebody. What she was doing was making a speech about pronouns, and she said something like, every time somebody's misgendered, a person with fair pronouns dies.
It's a great joke. That's a great joke.
Guys. There wasn't even anyone who takes these ridiculous pronouns there, and somebody weaponized that against her. They used that to try and get rid of her because she has said that men are not women and that women's rights need protecting.
Yeah. She's an old school feminist, basically, who understands basic biological fact.
She is, and she's a Green. She should be there fighting for the environment, not having to fight for basic facts.
Yeah, it's genuinely quite terrifying. Whenever we read these stories, a reason I always want to talk about them, as mad as they are, is that when, political parties, organisations like the NHS, universities, wherever, when they're spending their time on this nonsense, they are not doing the job we need them to do for us. So good to talk to you. Thank you for always calling it out and standing firm. Mary Forstead, Chief Executive of Sex Matters, thank you for that. Benedict Stencil with me. I mean, you can't make this stuff up because it is so laughable now.
Do you not believe in fairies, Julia?
I used to.
Did you? Do you believe in fairies?
My daughter's tooth fairy. My daughter's tooth fairy wrote the most beautiful letters. Then she discovered that apparently they weren't written by the tooth fairy. They might have been written by someone else who looked like her mum.
Oh dear.
And I don't think we've ever got over the trauma, to be honest with you.
There was a girl I went to university
with.
Who
are you?
Oh my God, it's a fairy!
Who's talking
Who's
talking right now?
Just speak
By
of it,
the
it
way,
emerges.
Peter Cantwell's here. You know the rules. Wait a minute. I'm just going to leave it. Peter Cantwell is here, standing in for Ian Collins.
I'm identifying as Ian Collins. My pronouns are each, many. Don't misgender me. There was a girl I went to university with who thought that you could fairies meant that she was a fairy and that you could fly by putting glitter on yourself. She jumped out of a tree and broke her arm.
Sorry.
She later went on to be a student at Oxford University.
Of course she did. Was that? And when did the men in white coats